There you
Everybody
go.
ready to go?
Yes,
All
we
right.
have.
Do we have this started?
The light is on the camera, so I would assume so.
Assume it is.
Only
Okay.
the one camera though.
Are we ready?
This isn't the right
Oh, the light's off now.
Yeah.
The light's on this one.
Some sort of remote right
Yeah,
here.
Oh, there's
it's
the
moving.
remote. Thank you.
The cameras are moving.
Wow. That was a pitch.
Careful.
I didn't know she
Here
was
we-
coming for.
Uh-oh.
Easy tagger.
Hey, Netflix.
That's what we're gonna watch.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay.
You're good.
We're good. Okay.
It's
Was
off
it
the
knocked
air.
out by the power, do you think?
I don't know. I think we just got the signal that we're all set, though.
All right, well, shall I call the meeting to order again?
No, I think we're all set.
All right, we're all set.
Oh, this one's recorded.
All right, welcome, everybody. I need to start out by announcing that the planning board meetings are broadcast live and digitally recorded. I want to, we have guests tonight, so our membership, I'm Alice Livedall, the chair. Next to me, Francois Steiger. Next to him, Bill Holman. Next to him, our new member, John Demalia, and Craig Bosnoa. So, and we have also our new associate member here tonight. So, we want to welcome Josh Dubois.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, if you're a scheduled speaker, we know you're here. If you're a visitor, we ask people to sign in and let us know if you want to speak. And we may have other people coming in, I don't know. But we try to give everybody an opportunity to speak. We like to hear what the public has to say. So is there anybody tonight that wants to speak? If you're on the agenda, you'll get a chance, but otherwise, okay. Well, then we'll move on to our agenda. Our first item of business is to approve the minutes from August 7th, which is the meeting before last.
My name's Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are these the same ones you sent out by email?
They are.
Wanna make a motion, Bill?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I second.
You got a second? Any
Yes.
additions, corrections, discussion?
Don't see any.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So our next agenda item, our guest is Mr. John Hume, who's here from to talk about the historical and cultural chapter of the master plan he's been working on. Okay, come join us at the table if you'd
thank
like.
you.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
Mr. Flynn, pass it down.
Oh, this is your handout? Okay.
And the
Yes,
second handout.
Ooh.
Well, we've got two handouts. One is a PowerPoint handout right here that you can follow along with this evening. And the second handout is a first draft report of the Historic and Cultural Resources chapter of the master plan.
How exciting.
So it is the first draft though, and then I was going to ask everybody if they could take it back home, review it over the next 2 weeks, and provide me with any edits or comments. You could go through Christina and forward edits and comments to her, and she could forward it to me if that's the best way to do it. Okay.
Definitely.
Great. So moving on to page 2 of the PowerPoint handout here. What I wanted to do first is just take up about 10 minutes of your time. I wanted to give a quick overview of what needs to be in a master plan, which is on page 2 of the PowerPoint handout. Give a quick overview of the scope of work for the Historic and Cultural Master Plan chapter. Then go over work that's been done so far in the Historic and Cultural chapter. So, in a master plan, Mass General Laws Section 81D, the law states that you need to have a goals and policy statement. You need chapters on housing, transportation, economic development, which you've got, that's posted on your website that I worked on a year and a half ago. Historic and cultural resources, which we're working on now. Open space and community services. Then you'll need a land use plan and an implementation plan. Now, to do your master plan and get it done expeditiously, the Montezuma Regional Planning Commission applied for a grant to the state back in the summer, early summer, to do 4 chapters for you. That would be a statement of goals and policies, the transportation, community services, open space and recreation, and housing. I'm hopeful it comes through. The state contacted our executive director on August 16th and was inquiring about the budget and when we would spend the money. That's a good sign when that happens. So I'm very hopeful that it would get funded and we could work on those 4 chapters for you. Then that would leave the land use chapter and the implementation chapter. The historic and cultural resource chapter that I'm working on right now is funded through our DLTA program, District Local Technical Assistance, at no cost to the town of Hubbardston.
Nice.
So we are going to put out another request for service delivery because we get funded back in July once again for our DLTA program, so we're going to have some funds. And you could apply for the land use chapter and implementation chapter late fall or early winter. Then you'd have everything set in place so you could get a master plan done, which would be terrific. I know it's been a while. So turning the page to page 3 in the PowerPoint handout, this is the scope of work. It outlines basically the work that's being done in the historic and cultural chapter. And we need to have that completed by December according to Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but we're in pretty good shape, I think, having coming out with a first draft like we have. And I'd like to keep working on it too and polishing it up, particularly the recommendation section, and get some strong recommendations in there. And I'd like to include a few maps in there too of your historic districts and an inventory of the properties within that district too. So we have a good GIS department, and I'd like to take advantage of that and get a couple of good maps in this report too. Like I said, it's not done yet, and it's first draft, so we're working on that. So turning to page 4, pages 4 through 10 are all about the historic and cultural resource document. It's just to provide a brief overview for you so that you know what the contents are at this meeting. So when you bring it back home with you and review it over the next few weeks, you'll have a general understanding of what it's all about. The introduction is basically something that states the importance of historical and cultural resources in the town of Hubbardston. They enrich and enhance the community, build civic pride, help define Hubbardston's identity. Also, maintaining, restoring, and reusing historic properties can preserve neighborhood character, protect the tax base by maintaining value, attract businesses looking for communities with a high quality of life, sense of pride and character. And also, just as important as preserving historic sites is preserving traditions through annual celebrations. That's a very important cultural aspect, and events that attract Hubbardston residents and visitors. So turning to the next page, on page 5, the report gives a brief history of Hubbardston. It's very interesting. It was originally in the northeast quarter of Rutland, and it was incorporated as a separate district in 1767 and named for Thomas Hubbard. The town's early economy was based on agriculture and small-scale chair, boot, and shoe manufacturing. Dairy and berry farming and market gardening were major pursuits in the town back in the 19th century. And turning the page, we have inventory and documentation. This page 6 is about the National Register of Historic Places. You've got you've got a district that's registered under the National Register of Historic Places, and you've got 2 properties here too. The district is Hubbardston Town Common Historic District, and that was entered into the register in November 22nd of the year 2000. Your library, the Hubbardston Public Library, is listed. That was back on August 19th, 1998. And you have another property, Reverend Samuel Gay House at 10 Williamsfield Road. That was listed back in 1997. So turning the page number 7, this is about the Mass Historical Commission, and it's something called Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System. And the acronym for it is MACRIS. And MACRIS inventory of Hubbardston includes 210 buildings, 3 areas, which includes the Town Center Historic District, 12 structures, and 10 burial grounds. And I did attach that list onto the report right here. And I wanted to point out that if you could go through it, if you see any inaccuracies, it'd be good to take a note of it. It's the state's database. I worked with a few other communities on their master plan, including Templeton and Shirley, and most of it was right, but they did find a couple of inaccuracies in there, so it'd be nice if you could review that. And if you didn't catch everything, that's okay, because I put it in as like a draft recommendation for the town to go through it thoroughly and try and determine if it's all the way that it should be. So moving on to page 8, we have cultural resources in the community. You've got your public library, and in 2016, the library had an interior restoration, which I'm sure that you're aware about, which is really good. You also have a local cultural council, historical commission, and a historical society. And you also have a community preservation committee, an agricultural commission, and a town center committee. And you also have special events, which are really good to promote the community, local businesses, organizations, and residents alike. And that's a good thing, and it's nice to keep that up. Moving on to page 9, we have potential goals and objectives. A goal would be, or could be, it's up to you after you look through and make edits and comments, but I came up with something that says preserve the town's historic fabric and protect the quality of cultural resources to ensure a vibrant, diverse, sustainable community. And it's followed by 3 objectives here too on how to achieve that goal. And moving on to the last page of the PowerPoint handout, we have some potential draft recommendations. I know that we were going to review recommendations at a separate planning board meeting according to the scope of work, but we weren't able to meet in August because you had time constraints with a public hearing, I believe. So I just went ahead and started working on the draft recommendations so that we can keep on track. We can spend more time on them the next time I come out to the planning board meeting and give those a good hard look. So, but some of them, well, they include reviewing MACRIS, as I pointed out, that list in the document there. Being aware of preservation restrictions and conservation restrictions. Public education, including perhaps partnering with Hubbardston Public Schools, for example, to find students interested in assisting with research. That can be a nice thing. And being aware of the Massachusetts Preservation Project Fund and Mass Historical Commission Survey and Planning Grant Program, you can leverage it. They require like a 50% match. It's actually federal funds that goes through the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But you can leverage that with Community Preservation Act funds, which the town of Hubbardston participates in that program. And keep up to date with any kind of training that MHC might have to offer. They have an on-the-road workshop for communities, which might be interesting if MRPC could assist the community, and we could have other communities participate in it too. And we can have Mass Historical Commission come out and give a presentation, go over all the different funding sources that they have. And I think a lot of communities could benefit from that, including the town of Hubbardston. Maybe I could put something on during late fall or something, or early winter. And that could be a good thing to have those folks come out. And also, another recommendation would be to continue to utilize Community Preservation Act funds as a valuable resource to enhance historic and cultural assets. You've been doing a good job with that. I looked at the projects that were funded through CPA funds, and I put the list in the document right here. So it'd be a wonderful thing if you could keep up that effort and bring it forward. So basically, that's what this report is about, right here. I think I covered the highlights, and if anybody has any questions, or if I could come back to the next planning board meeting in October, after I get some comments and edits from you folks, and I could email this out to Christina, and she could distribute it a week before the planning board meeting, so that you can all take a good look at it before the meeting, because I know it's a lot of information right here.
Awesome.
John, we really thank you for this effort. There's no way we could have put this together, so.
Oh, well, thank you.
But did you find both historic committees in town had some input? Did they respond?
The Historical Society, yes, Kathy.
Yep.
I met with Kathy yesterday.
Yeah,
And
good.
I actually gave her a copy of the Historic and Cultural Resources draft right here.
Mhm.
And she's going to give it a good look, too, over the next 2 weeks and provide some comments. I wasn't able to contact Gary, though. I tried emailing Gary. I haven't been able to get in contact with him.
Gary
The his-
Kangas?
Gary Kangas.
Yes.
Yeah,
Maybe we should send him a copy of the draft. You wouldn't care, would you?
that'd be great.
Okay.
Can
Yeah.
you send those to me in PDF?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And will we put them on the agenda for
Yeah.
October?
October, we also have a guest in October coming from Habitat for Humanity.
Mhm.
So you
Okay.
can,
Yeah.
if you want to come a little later, you can coordinate with Christina.
Okay.
And so you don't have to sit through too many presentations.
Oh, sure,
Uh,
sure.
Or come and
Okay.
listen. It's new to
Okay.
us, working with this new chapter, so.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to reading it. Other comments? Yeah?
Just,
Well, I'm sorry, go
no,
ahead.
that's all right. Quick question.
Mhm.
On the second bullet item on this last page, page 10,
Yep.
it says be aware of preservation. These are the potential draft recommendations.
Yeah.
Are these as a general educational component, or more as it is applicable to the town of Hubbardston that you are mentioning it here? Or
Well-
potentially both?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think if the town could be aware that that can be used as a tool for historic and cultural resources.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because I think that we have both areas that can be addressed.
Yes.
And then the other question I had
Mhm.
is, I believe that you work not just with the town, do you work just with the town of Hubbardston right now, or do you working with other surrounding towns in this area?
On master plans in
Yeah,
specific?
something like this here, exactly.
Let's see, for master plans, I worked with Templeton, I worked
Mhm.
with the town of Shirley. We applied for a grant with the town of Sterling, too, the same grant that you're
Okay.
interested in, and Ashburnham, too.
Perfect.
So-
The reason I'm asking is there a potential for us to get some perspective? I'm not asking for a report or anything like that,
Mhm.
as to how this town compares to other towns.
Yes.
And because I think that would be very beneficial for us to understand where do we excel, exceed, and where do we maybe have potential opportunities in any of the areas that you're outlining here for us to take advantage of ideas that may come from other towns and
Yes.
places. Again, let's not reinvent the wheel, but let's see what other people do that can be potentially very beneficial.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep, that makes sense. We are a regional planning agency too, so
That's
we
why I'm
do
bringing
work
it
with
up.
other communities, so it's a good point.
Thank you so much.
Bill,
Okay.
questions? Bill said,
Thank you.
anybody else?
I'm all set.
Okay, we have quite a big agenda tonight, so really thank you for doing
Yep,
this
thank
work.
you very much.
Absolutely
I'm so
amazing.
glad we got
Amazing.
the grant and you were able to do it for us. We will read with interest and send, and get comments back to you. Great.
Good job.
Thank you
so
again.
much.
Really,
Thank you.
Really appreciate all that hard work.
Great.
Next up is benchmarking. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, the representatives from Streeter Road, if you remember from town meeting, working on creating a public way on Streeter Road, which is currently a private road, are here. I'd like to take.
You don't mind taking out of order? All right.
There's unanticipated, and I can explain why too, of course.
Okay, go ahead. We'll take this matter up next, but we'll start with you.
You want us to all come up, or?
Yeah, sure, come up.
So the reason why this is coming before you tonight is the plans for the Streeter Road that were in front of you before and recommended to town meeting and approved by the Board of Selectmen, then approved by town meeting. In order to go to the Registry of Deeds under Chapter 4181X, needs either a stamp from a surveyor, registered surveyor, or it needs to be signed by the planning board by law. I've been speaking with council all week, and we were going back and forth as to whether or not it would be signed by the surveyor or it would need to come before the planning board. So I spoke extensively with our town council, specifically related to this issue, have been working on this issue the entire time, and have answers to any questions that I think you might have. But overall, the reason why you're signing it is in order to satisfy the Registry of Deeds. It's completely different than the recommendation you made before. And also, lawyers said it's important to note that, however, the planning board is not approving any new lines or boundaries, and the boundaries of abutting lots have not changed. There's only two administrative differences, if you want to go through them, but as the town understands them, it's a book and page number, which the lawyers say it's just an administrative change that has no meaning, and then a note has been added. Well, it has meaning, but it has no meaning to us.
Yeah,
I don't want to misspeak.
it's a reference point.
Yes.
Okay,
And then a note was added to essentially say that this easement, which we're taking land for an easement later on Monday, has no change to the status of the Lovewell Pond Association, which is on the other side. Basically, there's no change in rights to the pond or their particular interests. That's being added for clarity, in my opinion, and in the lawyer's opinion, and again, has no change on the boundaries or any of the other issues involved here. So what you would be signing is that these are the plans that went before town meeting and now can go to the Registry of Deeds.
so I have a question.
Yes.
Is this club, where there was a discussion about moving the sideline to the center line and they would give us a wedge of land. Is that included in this or it's not included in
So
this?
before, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know we have two very good subject matter experts here. Before town meeting, before this was brought to you, the section was moved away from 41 Grimes, which is the Begley property,
Right.
towards the Lovewell Pond Association.
Okay,
That has always been on the plan and is currently on the plan.
okay,
So what used to be the traveled way, the easement was moved to the edge of that travel way, pushing the easement onto the Lovewell Pond Association. That
Okay.
was what was recommended by this board and the Board of
okay.
Selectmen.
Just want to make sure it's in there, because I think it's the best we could do with,
Yep.
personally, with that situation.
Could I request one thing? Could I
No, go
ask
ahead.
these folks
Go
to
ahead, Bill.
introduce themselves do you know everybody here?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Hi, I'm Deb Reed. I live on Streeter Road.
Hi, John Devine.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Peter Russell. I live at 20 Streeter Road, but I'm also the president of the Lovewell Pond Sporting Club Incorporated. So I'm wearing two hats, as a personal abutter as well as the corporate president.
So John, the backstory is this road was not accepted by the town prior.
Yes.
So abutters they came to us, we had a big hearing, they kept saying they had to contribute a lot of money annually to just fix it up. So this went to town meeting, so we were just a recommending body.
Mhm.
And town meeting accepted it, not to pave it, not to build it up to today's road standards, but to maintain it the way other public roads are maintained in town,
As a town road.
as a town road. So that's the difference, and we had a butter that was very unhappy with it. And so they did adjust the line to try to meet her concern. She's a corner lot holder. So that was a question I was asking about.
Yes.
So,
So this is,
quick backstory in a second.
so town meeting approved this as a public way, so that part is complete. What we're in now is making sure that all the easements and land taking is required are done in order to make this a public way. We have 120 days to do that, which is early October. So we're here to get this done so we can go to the Registry of Deeds. And then so you know what's going to continue on after this. There's an order of taking that needs to be signed by the Board of Selectmen on Monday. And then other associated measures that we're still scrambling to get through, as we always are.
So the easements are going well. People are cooperating with the easements.
So there would really be considered waivers.
Waivers,
Every
okay.
single person on the street has signed a waiver,
Oh, good, good.
with the exception of the corner lot.
Right.
But everybody else has signed a waiver to give up their piece of.
And how much are we talking in property to become part of the?
So there's actually no taking of property, it's
Yeah.
an
An
easement.
easement.
Right,
Yeah.
but what is the easement?
Easement is essentially the same thing as
I
what's
know
already
what it
there.
is, but how big, what are we talking, 10 feet?
It's
on
the
either-
same as is shown on
It's
the
33
plan.
feet wide
Okay.
at most cases.
Okay.
23 feet at the causeway.
Okay.
So on this
Yep.
plan, the easements are the dark black lines.
Yep.
The traveled
Okay.
way being the dotted lines.
Okay.
And these are just technical corrections. So I know that,
No corrections have been made except the 2 administrative notes. This is just saying that these are the plans, essentially, to the Registry of Deeds.
okay.
So you need to sign page 1, 2, and 3, and then we can make sure that,
And as you said, this is what was approved at town meeting.
yes, nothing.
It's, the plan is essentially identical. The only thing, as Ryan mentioned, that's different is the fact that somehow there was a reference for one of the pieces of the Lovewell Pond property that got put on the plan that actually was from another town and another person. It had nothing to do with Lovewell Pond. So clearly that had to be corrected. So that's a correction that you'll see right here, and you'll see it right here. And then at the bottom here is just a simple note. Again, what Ryan covered is just the fact that the easement that's being taken on street or road does not provide any public access to the pond, because the pond continues to be a private pond and will be cared for by the Lovewell Pond Association. So,
So you say you have how many pages that need to be signed?
there's
How
3
many people?
pages, yep. The first 2, literally no changes made.
I think the way to do this, what we've done in the past, is spread them out, and then we'll follow each other one after another.
So you wanna come
Coming
this way?
around.
It's approved by the town. I'm gonna do it.
Is there any particular pen color that you are
I have
allowed or not allowed? Or?
We have the
Oh, you have the
I have
marker.
that
There we
Sharpie
go,
and
the
Mylar.
Sharpie.
The last 2 times we did it, we had to have special Sharpie.
That's the Sharpie. This is,
Be
No, that's
Sharpie.
not felt, I'd rather
but it
use.
is an extra fine point. which
I'm not
helps.
sure that's a roller ball, not a felt.
Deb, let's
You
lay
might have
out
to
page
use.
1, 2, and 3.
Oh, you've got ones that are different?
I don't know if I have any that are different, but.
I just want to make sure
Different?
it's,
This one isn't good?
Okay, so
one's
this
a roller
is,
ball, maybe.
I'm sorry.
It might smear the Mylar.
okay.
May I see those?
Good to stand up.
Yep, these are fine, these are felt.
Okay.
Careful of the
We'll
corner.
use Christina's instead.
Works well.
Well, either one,
The
blue or
blue
black
one
would work
works really
professional.
well.
I'm gonna move,
No, I
who is
don't.
this? This is,
I think that's Ryan's.
Ryan's, I'm moving your stuff over a little bit.
And then I did, if anybody wants to see it, I did bring, just, this is the copy of the actual book and page deed
Okay.
that we corrected on page 3, just if anybody wanted to see it.
Okay.
Yeah, see, this marker doesn't work good, but the blue one works great.
Is blue okay with the
blue okay?
registry?
Yeah,
That's fine, blue and black are fine, both
All right.
professional.
Okay, so there's 3 places here. 1,
One.
2, and 3.
Okay,
And I
I'll
put a
run down.
blotter under each one, so the Sharpie, just in case it
Oh.
doesn't go through.
Okay.
Good point.
so, and then the top one is the date, so we don't want to sign there.
Okay.
So when I used to do contracts, you had to use blue. You had to prove it was the original.
Craig, you need to sign a new registry form too.
Yeah, I already talked to Christina about
We'll
it.
do it administrative. It's on the
I know,
agenda.
but they won't be able to record it unless we do that.
They actually have him on file from before. His signature, him and Bill's signatures are both on file.
Oh, okay, all
This is
right.
administrative that we're updating.
The last one was not required on you?
This
Yeah,
is,
I think that's just
The
a
last
paper
one's just a
copy.
page,
Yeah,
a
it's just a
paper
paper
copy.
copy,
There you
so
go.
you're just signing the Mylar.
So I can go next time?
So I've got it right, guys,
You
right?
got it.
Okay, then just come
We're
around.
watching
and we'll-
closely, Chairman.
Wait, don't do this again.
What a big project. What a big project.
Still in the town's business.
Here you go.
Excuse me. We want to
Think-
date this, Deb? I think we should be dating this on September 4th. Can we do that?
Yeah.
I would
Date
have,
it.
do you want to date it? Just for
Sure.
formality's sake.
Yeah.
September 4th. That's been 68 birthday.
All 3 pages, please, on top.
Do you want just numbers with slashes?
Mhm.
Okay.
Whatever.
Or you wanna put
Whatever's your
September?
personal
Yeah, I
style,
don't
I
think it
think would be
matters.
acceptable.
Yeah. And because I don't know that it really matters, I did just want to mention that I did email and ask to be put on the agenda. I did get a confirmation email that I was going to be on the agenda, but somehow that didn't happen, so I hope that doesn't cause any kind of...
No, I actually already.
Thanks for
discussed
clarifying, because that was a question I had as to why it
No.
was not a part of the
And
agenda.
I actually emailed the board stating you would be
Yeah.
on the agenda.
Yeah.
But somehow, I'm not sure what happened. I
Good.
didn't make it on the agenda.
Yeah.
When it got posted,
Okay.
I apologize.
It's good we have you here. And get this over with
Mm-hmm, yep.
for you,
Let those dry
For the town.
for the
For
town.
everybody.
Let them dry for a minute, huh?
Yeah, I would.
Hopefully will.
Don't
So any
smudge.
questions or, okay,
No.
No, good luck.
When's your deadline?
I think it's like October 2nd.
Okay.
It's the
Yeah, which you don't need
120
until October
days
4th.
From
So we needed you
June
tonight.
I certainly
4th,
understand.
so,
That
yeah.
makes perfect sense that you're here then.
We will
Yeah.
easily make it.
Yeah. It's all good. So thank you for your time. Again, we appreciate it.
Well, take care, good
We'll
luck.
put paper in between each one of those.
You want to?
Yeah, because then we won't
Can I
have
steal
any.
some of this? Paper?
Can I spot it? Do we have any clear paper?
I was going to
If you could grab a tissue.
email it to you.
Oh, there you go.
I want to make sure I know where they are.
Be $1.
'Cause then I-
Oh, you want, you
Yeah,
got
and the
pages?
paper.
I think you need to take it.
Tomorrow.
That was a lot of force.
Lucky he's back to
No,
school,
not
saving us a
till
Walmart, so
Tuesday,
that's
after the
25 cents.
selectmen's, the order
I'm
of
not gonna go
taking will be,
Yeah, I don't.
We're actually
recorded.
sending over registry documents tomorrow, that's why I was asking.
What's
So
our
I could,
agenda?
exactly, I wanna make sure everything got finalized.
It'll all go at the same time.
Okay, that's fine then.
Order.
As long as they have the facts in hand, they're fine.
Yeah, I can give you one of these paper copies if you care, but.
It'll be online shortly, right?
Yep, there you go, Lee. Right.
Thanks for letting us in.
Thanks for squeezing us into your busy schedule.
And again, I apologize for the agenda.
No worries.
Those things happen when you got a lot on your plate.
Power up on Street Road right
Not on the other side of town either, right?
Great.
On this side of town, right?
Thank you so much.
now. Ryan, thanks for coming.
See you Monday.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Okay, so we're still on the schedule for Monday?
Yes.
Okay, see you then.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Thank you for coming. Wow, all right.
That was a good thing done.
Woo!
There's way too much paper there.
Got a lot to talk to you about.
Okay, we'll just breathe for a minute, let Craig get back.
So master plan, it's going well. Be very
Looks
excited
good.
to finish that document.
Yeah, really nice. So I had a question that I didn't ask him again because I should have caught it. But he said the second round of grants that come up, which might make those last 2 chapters eligible, who is?
Oh, it's locked.
So we applied for DLTA to get this chapter done.
Yes.
Mhm.
Is it
Remember you
DLTA again?
made some recommendations to me what we should do. So it'll be DLTA again,
Next round.
whenever it opens. So that could be
Okay.
anywhere from November to April. And I won't miss that deadline, so.
Okay, so you're gonna let us know,
Yeah.
because we don't wanna miss it either.
And just so the public knows, these can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. So
Right.
using grant money for this,
It's awesome.
Perfect
the way it's
sense.
Everything.
designed,
This
gets us,
alone is many, many hours.
yes, several $1,000s for that document. So
Mhm.
DLTA might get us one more chapter, and then at that point, I'd probably be coming to recommend to you that we pay for or finish the plan, so we get it done within the recommended 2 years. But
Great.
it's been a long time, so we need another one.
Yep.
All right, so you're gonna switch hats here and talk about benchmarking, right?
Yes.
Would you please pass down?
Okay.
So first of all, it's been too long. I missed you guys.
No,
We
you
missed you.
The reason why bringing up benchmarking again is there was a lot of flux on the planning board, the finance committee, and then the board of selectmen. So all this, and then we went into town meeting with the budget, and then all those complications. So didn't want to drop this. We had discussed it a lot in the early spring. Now we're headed back into a season where you do more planning in the fall. So what is benchmarking? Benchmarking is something that we use in the municipal world to compare ourselves to others. So the reason why we would want to benchmark is to answer questions people always have. So how many vehicles do we have compared to other people? What is our budget size? How do we pay our employees? In your instance, what do we look like, right? What towns do we compare ourselves to? What towns do we want to be? So what's in front of you is the finance committee's swing at their benchmarks, what they consider to be the towns that they would compare themselves to in order to make budget decisions, which is the finance committee's prerogative. Right, the board of selectmen would obviously have different priorities. They're more of a generalist in terms of their approach to what we're doing in town government. And then the reason why I wanted to bring this in front of the planning board is you have a very different vision, and not different vision, I shouldn't say that, but a different way of looking at the town. So the idea was to bring those 3 major boards together, some of the long-term planners and decision makers in this town, to come up with a list that reflected what the planning board believes should be the way we look at ourselves, the way the finance committee does, and then the board of selectmen. In ideal world, we'd get 10 consensus towns that then I could use to report back to you, to the board of selectmen and the finance committee about how we're doing compared to our peers. So so I know that you had gone through this exercise before, but I was really hoping from the planning board to get more of a planning lens, which is, what do we want the town to look like in 25 to 50 years, right? How does it fit into our master plan and vision? Okay, there was discussions about an electronic sign recently, the sign bylaw, which we'll talk about. There's discussions about zoning and commercial versus residential. And then you get into conversations, well, we should bring more business in, or then on the other side, we should always remain what we are. So those are decision points that should be included in benchmarking, because if you do change a bylaw or you change an approach, right, you could start to look like another town or continue to look like this town or that town. So I obviously don't expect to banter about towns tonight, but I was hoping that you would take this, consider it, and then get back to me on a meeting that we could have when the finance committee, the board of selectmen, and the planning board could all get together and maybe come up with some consensus, so that we as a staff could use those benchmarks in order to help feed you information, helps you make your decisions.
I need to visualize more of what you're actually looking for us. Are you looking for documented priority lists that we voted on?
You want opinions, right?
Yes, but
Opinions, I mean, not, yeah.
from or a list of 10 would be great. 10
List,
towns
okay.
that Hubbardston would like to be, is like, or does not want to be, is another way of doing it as well. So you can say, we don't want to be like these towns, we do want to be like these towns, we think we're like these towns.
Do you want us to quantify that in some way?
I really don't want to tell you how to do it. But your methodology and your decision-making will help inform, right? Because the finance committee is going to come at it and say, we don't have the budget for this, and the select board's going to say, you know, we're trying to run a town here, and you're saying, this is our vision, our master plan.
Sure.
So everybody
Okay.
needs to be able to articulate to the public what their town should look like. And yours could be simply, we're not including these towns, because these towns are not fitting in our vision. And so you could just have veto power over some of these other towns that the finance committee's come up with, or the board of selectmen might suggest. If you all agree to that. And boy, that's gonna be a fun meeting.
What is EQV per capita?
It's,
Should the-
I'm not ready to give the formula exactly, but it's equalized value per capita.
So you take the value of the whole town and divide it by the citizens?
It's my understanding, but I'd have to look it up to give you a better answer. Josh Lerner, who you've probably seen some of his presentations, is pretty statsy finance committee member, gave a good presentation on why EQV might be the best way for us to look at ourselves in terms of our budget power.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean, just because you have your budget correct, doesn't mean that you are the town you want to look like, be like, feel like. So that's why the planning board should be included in this conversation, in my opinion.
I think.
We'll try to come up with something for you. When do you need this by?
There's no time frame. I would love for it to inform the FY21 budget process. So for that, it would need to be by January. I'd say we'd have to have these conversations. I envision if I had 10 benchmark towns, when I give my town administrators proposed budget, it would include some commentary on how we compare to our benchmark towns. Or if someone said, we need to hire this person, what salary should we pay? I would go to our benchmark towns and compare. Or if you were recommending a bylaw change, maybe the staff does an analysis for you on how we compare to our benchmark towns, right? It's just another data point. Doesn't mean you have to follow it, but it helps.
You know, there is a big database out there that things are drawn from. I don't know whether it includes zoning data or not.
Isn't that what Tom presented way back? That whole presentation? he
Yeah, I
came
do
up with?
remember that.
He did touch on it a little bit.
He did have a lot of this information on that presentation that he did.
But I'm just thinking on how to get,
And Tom's could certainly be a base, but I'm looking more for sort of a solidified vote. These are the towns that, or this is the methodology we'd like to bring to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can apply that when we have our larger, more informed discussion.
but we could in theory pick out one town because we like a particular attribute of that town.
Yep.
Okay, so we would like, you know, how some town has done their art scene, or how some town is, and they wouldn't all have to be matched up.
Nope.
Okay,
And I think it would help you drive your decision making, because when you're talking bylaws and things,
right,
there
that
could
would
be
help
analysis
us.
done.
So we don't have to balance all
You're
the
not
aspects.
going to be like them because here are your obstacles.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Or
Okay.
you're going towards this town that you don't want to be like because you're too loose with your bylaws or not all encompassing. I just think it gives you some working room and some parameters, and it also helps inform us staff on how to help you and how to advise you and how to budget.
Questions?
Nope, not this time for me.
Okay. He's wearing multiple hats tonight. So if you
Mad
go to
Hatter?
Todd Miller's handout, which is in the package,
Attachment number 3.
he talked, you remember, we have some planning help through our local
So
planning district.
Todd Miller is our economic development coordinator. This is a grant we have that was funded by Hardwick for all the Quabbin towns to share an economic development coordinator. We found in his first year, he was able to successfully start the Economic Development Committee, which I'm hoping will integrate more with planning and other ideas. They kind of go hand in hand. He accomplished getting up a new website and sort of building this infrastructure that we wanted to get done for economic development to then start executing the economic development chapter, the master plan, so it all ties together. Kind of see as town administrators his role moving more towards planning and technical assistance. If we were to pick one thing that we don't have in our small towns, it's the ability to help boards like this, planning board, with the technical side of things, right? So we want to do X, but we don't know how to do X. We'd like Todd to help, or someone like Todd, or some of these organizations like John's, to help you do those nuts and bolts so that we can accomplish the big vision, because that's really the planning board's purview. So I asked the planning board to consider, I asked Todd to come up with a menu of things that he might be able to accomplish based off some comments from you and some stuff that I added as well. So he came back with, this is how long it would take me to do X. So for example, for him to compare a signed bylaw, draft one, and help revise it, it'd be about 60 hours, or a week and a half of his time. Remember, it's split between 5 towns too, so we don't get just fully his time. Something like working on a town center overlay, which I hear a lot from residents. Why can't we have more businesses going down? You know, not saying that this is proposed right now, but let's say we were to look at something like, how would we expand our town center to be more business friendly? He said that would take 441 hours, or the entirety of what we have Todd for in this coming year. Some things that you threw on there, some economic development, affordable housing was about half his time, solar bylaw reviews about a week's worth of time, earth removal and growth control bylaw would be about 160, or about a quarter of his time. But also, if you identified we wanted to do these 5 things, and you told me you want to do those 5 things, directed me to do it, you also have me and other staff members that could take some of that on, work on some of this for you, and then farm some of it off to Todd, and together we'd come up with a product and give it to you.
When you said 5, you're taking out the town center overlay? Or did you mean 6?
I'm saying any of these things.
Any of these, okay.
So although you might think I only get 160 hours, we can supplement that with other staff time. Christina's very capable. Myself can do some of the research that will allow him to come up with a recommendation, finished project, to bring it to you. So what I'm asking for is a prioritized list of things you want me to engage the staff with, and some hard timelines for us to see if we can accomplish that for you.
Anybody want to start off the discussion? 'Cause I can start it if you want, with one little comment, which is the growth control bylaw, the last thing, which would take 160 hours. Our growth control bylaw expires in 2021, and it was passed in 2001, so it's 18 years old. It allowed 28 units to be built every year, excluding some things that are done by right. But we've never come anywhere close to the 28 units.
Mhm.
So I would say that should be the last on the list. You know, we still got another year and a half to think about it. It's not a pressing problem, to my way of thinking. We have a lot of pressing problems.
Great.
So,
Sounds
just
good to me.
throwing it out there, and somebody else can take the next lead. Or the next,
So you're ranking that like as
Dead last.
as a 6.
I could put it as no time, I think. We've got a year and a half, and it's
Okay.
not a problem at the moment.
Remove
I say
it.
earth removal should be
Near the
up there.
top.
We
That's
have-
what I was thinking.
We have some really good momentum that we started with the Catices
Mm-hmm.
project. It is a concern that has been brought up, and I think that in combination with some of the projects that they're looking at, potentially even with solar development, and how that potentially could evolve, and the economic benefits that for the town, I would like to see the analogous community solar and the earth removal kind of combined potentially, and see if there's an opportunity for us to leverage the goodwill of the work that has been done thus far, and maybe take that to the next step. That's my take on this here.
I agree with the earth removal. I'd like to have some work on that, because we do have a lot of issues in that area. But are we gonna utilize all our hours to do this? Even putting those two together, that's a lot of hours
What I'm wondering though is there an opportunity, or is there synergy
to send it
that
out.
you don't really have to look at 48 hours, because 48 hours analogous community solar bylaw reviews recommendations
Right,
versus
okay.
really looking at it more from the perspective of, here's a way that we can really focus our attention.
Okay.
And, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, Christina's done some work
Yep.
on figuring out where the pits were and
Yep.
are, it would help. Maybe reduce that time, but go ahead, Vince.
No, I understand where you're going. My position here is reclamation of the pits and offering an economic opportunity for them
Right.
as an alternative. That's how I was looking at it.
Right.
I'm not saying that that is the solution, but it is a potential enhancement by which we can bring productive land back into use with an economic tax base for the town.
And make those properties safe, because right now, most of them are.
Very important element, yes.
Another issue that came up was the sign bylaw. With the last, application through the building inspector and the zoning bylaw for the sign out here. I agree, I think we need to have work done on that, but is that something we can do internal?
Probably.
My plan is to take your priority and to offer you, here's what I think we can get done, here's who's gonna do
Right.
it, when do you want it?
I do think the sign lot bylaw, is there any disagreement with that
I think
here?
the sign law should.
It's a
bylaw should
very
be up there.
obsolete bylaw. It doesn't allow any LEDs, it doesn't, lighting, it doesn't allow. If you look at, compare it even to like Holden's, and Holden's a pretty restrictive community, but they've figured out how to allow
Right,
some of these
right.
signs in a reasonable way, so. So definitely put that one on your list.
So you wanna put the solar and the earth removal together as a group?
Correct, and I mean,
I'm just asking, is that how everybody else feels?
oh, okay.
I think with the earth removal, we also need, we have this bylaw, and I know it's not old, but when you go through this process with somebody, which every single one of these pits is,
Right.
that just needs to close it. First of all, it had a 2-year deadline, you're supposed to do something, and nobody's done anything.
Right.
Mhm.
And second of all, the application, we have an application form, and everything is not applicable, or you
Doesn't
need a
apply.
waiver for, or you need, so really that bylaw needs to be looked at in
And updated.
terms of what you need for a closure permit, which wouldn't be that hard to do, because now we've done it, we could give you what
Sample.
our expert, Bill Murray, what he waived and said you need to do. So if somebody could put those documents together and give us a coherent section that would be permanent closure, what we want on permanent closure would be helpful.
Okay.
And then suggested uses would be very helpful. Recovery, whether they're solar fields or maybe there are opportunities. What's the senior housing complex in town was that Ed Blanchard helped develop, was a gravel pit,
Madison Green.
Madison Green.
Mhm.
And if we have something we can put housing, or for that matter, industry
Yeah.
in, all those uses, not just solar, but, so that would be helpful, those two things would be very helpful.
How does everybody feel about the map bylaw and the town center overlay?
I feel like,
Yeah, I definitely feel like we should look at that again.
yes,
Right,
I do
right.
too, I do think with affordable housing, it has been studied and studied and studied, and nobody's ever done anything with
Mhm.
it. So I don't wanna spend another lot of time with studying it, but one of the problems, if you look at our bylaw, is the only sort of cluster housing that's allowed has to have a minimum of 20 acres, which is never gonna do cluster housing, for affordable housing. So we're meeting with Habitat for Humanity, we might be able to do a single or a double. But, so that is an issue that, with affordable housing, I think that should be looked at. And also whether you still want the 2-acre minimum lot to blanket the town, or whether there's some areas, we'd have to have hearings, I'm sure there'd be pushback, but there may be places where you could put in 1-acre minimum lots, where you could put more affordable housing in. Maybe you can't, I know it's soils and a lot of issues in that.
Yep, perk
But-
tests and things of that
Well,
nature.
what about the, 55 and older on Old Princeton Road? I can't think of the name of it.
Oh, Housing
Moose
Authority.
Horn. Moosehorn, that's not 2-acre lots.
There was Housing Authority with HUD back from
Okay.
1986, I think, before our housing, before our
Okay,
bylaw.
because that's something that's possible.
So,
It's a beautiful place.
in terms of affordable housing, I'd like the issue to be, how we can accommodate affordable housing by changing some of our restrictions and maybe having actually an affordable housing,
Plan?
but plan, but most people, when they build affordable housing in a complex, only they want it to be moderate, housing with a certain number of affordable units. That's the way you do it. So you don't want to create a zone that only allows affordable housing. You don't want to do
Right,
that.
right.
I'm just saying there are very few opportunities with that 20-acre minimum, I believe. So, I don't know how much time that's worth, but maybe you could do that in something less than 240 hours. And the economic development, I think, is, we shrunk the commercial. First of all, there is no light industry zone on our map at all.
Right.
But that we have a light industry bylaw
Right.
uses. So, my question with economic development is, should we have some a light industrial zone that would be different
And
than our?
my other comment on that too is the commercial district went all the way up to the Gardner line originally.
Right.
And that was changed when a few individuals wanted to talk about putting an airport and a pig farm out in the back over here, and they actually voted and changed it, and they shrunk that district down. Is that something we want to look at? Because a commercial property would like the benefit of being right near Route 2 in Gardner, on the Gardner Road side.
Right.
And there are properties up there that would actually do well. Because, gravel pits and all those would really be a big plus. Something maybe the town could look at.
Maybe not rezoning the whole corridor like it was,
Well, I think
but
we should look at it.
spots.
I think it needs to
Yes.
be looked at.
Okay,
One
look-
question that I would like to bring up is what is appropriate economic development for this town? I mean, we've talked about, bringing in industry, we've talked about bringing in retail and other things. And I sometimes struggle with that because we are very close to some communities or places such as Gardner where there is already big boxes, and it's very hard to compete when you're a drugstore in Cambridge with the 5 drugstores there in Gardner, as an example.
Right.
As convenient as it would be nice to only travel 2 miles instead of the 10 miles. The question that I would bring is what makes sense for a community such as ours when we're looking from an economic development perspective? I've always argued the fact that we've got enormous amounts of natural beauty here, and my question is tourism something that we ought to be looking at developing? And is that something that, for example, other communities that are surrounding us complement? Again, look at Mount Wachusett, very close by. People are looking for bed and breakfasts that are maybe close by, can do the nature walks in the fall, can do the spring, can do the winter skiing and other things of that nature. I'd like to really look at what is Hubbardston best potentially suited for. Is it industry? It might be. Is it retail? I don't know. Should we put something else on the map? As I said, in my mind, I've always looked at tourism, and the lack of it here always befuddles me. And maybe that is the wrong answer, but I'd like to have somebody help us identify what can we identify as the potential best way in which economic development can be extrapolated for this town. And I'm not asking for a detailed plan, but it's like, what do towns around this area do in order to improve their economies? Should we go fully solar here? I mean, will that increase the tax base sufficiently? And that's the industry we should be focusing on. Or should we focus on something else? What makes sense? I think we all have our own ideas, but I think what we lack is sort of like the vision of what Hubbardston in north central Massachusetts potentially could be utilized for.
So as a very dedicated to this town outsider,
Yeah.
I can tell you it is that vision that's missing. So if you look at it from the staff perspective, if you look at what I'm trying to get you to do tonight, so the benchmarking discussion, right? If you said, how do we compare to whatever, the idea of even starting that for the staff, we'd have to spend, if you look at the hours, which is why I wanted them put there, almost all my time and almost all Todd's time doing something that you might not like.
I
Right, so
understand.
those are the answers that we need first. So this isn't I'm just using a specific example so that it's very clear. So the pits are always discussed as a place for economic development. But I've heard from almost everyone in town different visions for what would actually go in there and what would be acceptable. So imagine staff engaging in hours and hours and hours of discussion about developing that area or investing or building the infrastructure, only to find out the town didn't want to invest X amount of dollars or put that particular industry in there. So the questions of what should be coming to Hubbardston is the most important question, and then engage the staff on how do we change the bylaws, how do we attract businesses, how do we go and get
I
it.
agree, but having that vision in terms of what are the potential ways that, for example, pits can be used, is certainly a question that everybody, again, has, it's like a belly button, everybody has one, everybody has an opinion, right? So the question is, from an economic development, for example, I think that we need to start engaging in what makes sense for here, what do other places, because again, we have opinions, but I don't think we understand what our geographic area is capable of, or what the opportunities potentially are. And that's where I think we all need some help. So if I would look at economic development, I'm not looking for some very specific plan, do this here, but engender in us a vision of, look, have you thought about this here? This is how this town is doing this here, or, mix this plus this here. And that, I think, prompts a set of discussion. I think we have too many segregated different ideas, but not something that allows us to formulate a vision. That's the way I would look at this here. And I don't think that requires necessarily 140 hours, but maybe a subset of that to help mold that and get us started.
Right. And if you layered on what do we want the town to look like, then you've got a very powerful decision-making tool coming your way.
Exactly.
Because almost any economic development discussion, not to take a side on a particular issue, would involve something like informing the community through an electronic sign.
Absolutely.
Or having certain businesses be allowed in certain zones that would allow us to grow our tax base in order to preserve
Correct.
some of the land and recreation areas that we have.
I think we need to decide what types of businesses we want to allow in the
Right.
town, and then
Or
give
where.
them appropriate zones, right, and where.
Well, I think the benchmarking helps also if we look at the other communities and
Right.
what they have.
Because do we want a Walmart in town?
No.
Probably not, right? Do we want a Dunkin' Donuts? Probably not. But do we want some small businesses? Probably. But we got to decide what we want and what we don't.
And it could involve investing in attracting Airbnb type people.
Exactly.
But then that would maybe involve taking advantage of that through some type of tax, right? So those are discussions that need to be had.
Precisely. And this is, towns can open themselves up to a revenue source that comes as a result of whatever industry or business you bring into town.
Right.
So if it's the tourism industry, there are opportunities. If it's the solar, there's these opportunities. If it's light industry, there's these opportunities. But we need to understand what actually makes sense, because we're never going to, in my opinion, I don't think we're going to be able to attract Caterpillar to come here and build a Caterpillar plant.
And nobody
But-
wants, from
And
my
probably nobody wants
No,
it
we
either.
like John Deere, no.
Well, okay. You understand the point I'm trying to make
Please
here.
come,
is-
John Deere.
The point,
I'm only kidding.
the point is just that we need to understand what actually makes sense, because we can, in our minds, think that we could bring in a big box store here, but will that be truly a reality? Probably not, based on the competition of other cities and towns that we have in our surrounding areas.
Oh, good point.
Francois,
Yes.
what if we, this should be a kind of a two-way street, I see his
Yes,
point.
yes.
So if we came up with, for example, light industry, a list, these are light industries which we think might fit in town.
Sure.
These are, this kind of affordable housing we think might fit in town.
Mhm.
This is what we think, then let his people
Exactly.
come back and tell whether they're likely to succeed, whether they're a revenue sink or revenue generator.
I
And
think that makes
differs
sense.
from the, like, for example, you used to not want subdivisions because they would overcrowd the school, but now we've
Mhm.
got declining schools, so I think we need to kind of drive that discussion too, and then we can say, add other things.
So I think we can collectively ourselves provide sort of what we have, individual ideas.
Right.
And come back with that list for Ryan to explore. What I'm saying is if you take that now and provide that to Todd might say, hey, if you go down this route, you have maybe a 10% chance of success. If you take this route, you may have a 75% of chance of success. That's what I'm looking for, and that's where I'm trying to allocate Miller's time. So yes, I agree with you. We need to catalyze this here by providing our ideas. What I'm trying to explain here, from my perspective, is I'd like to use Todd as a way for him to use that as vetted out, come back with some more educated information based on either analysis he does, queries he does, reviews that he does, and says, hey, again, this will give you the best bang for your buck, in my opinion, because he is the I'm not saying the expert, but he may have a better perspective of this here.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
One thing that has come up twice in the last 2 weeks is the marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we've
Growing.
we've had inquiries
have
about that,
another
which
inquiry.
is
There are
interesting.
many in-
We have nibbles.
nibbles, and if you
Literally.
really, it's a potential moneymaker for the town, for
It is.
sure.
Yes.
But
It
we
has
have a bylaw that is badly written and needs clarification,
Yes.
but basically it says, in a residential agricultural zone, which is the entire green part of this map,
Mm-hmm.
we can only grow up to 5,000 square feet.
It's very limited.
By right.
By
By-
right.
Yeah,
No,
without a-
by
No, no,
special
no,
permit.
No, by special
That's
permit.
it.
Yeah.
So you have to, if you wanna do more than that, you gotta get to a commercial district. Well, how much land in the commercial district? I mean, if you're growing it, you're probably not looking at a commercial district, you're looking at an agricultural district. So I think there's kind of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
I know maybe our town's feeling was they wanted to start with baby steps. But right off the bat, we have an inquiry this week. If I build 10,000 and it goes well, are you gonna let me build the next 10,000? We
Yeah.
can't
50.
say that. You'd have to say, well, you need a new zoning amendment. I mean, we'll write them back, but it's,
It's
and that
limited.
isn't even on our list, but it is you
Right.
could consider it economic development, and we could add it.
It's hard for people to think about, right? So they think, this happens in my town where I live, right? Like, we would love a nice dentist office right here. Like, it doesn't
Sure.
work that way. If a dentist office wanted to move there, they would say, hey, Hubbardston, can I fit here?
Mhm.
It's the way you lay the field for people to come in.
Right.
And the cannabis growers, if you want to be a cannabis town, 5,000 is probably not enough for them to be profitable.
You're right.
So although you would accept that personally, if you really want to open yourselves up, and you may not, to a cannabis industry, it's probably not going to attract anyone that's going to do anything beneficial to the town. And the flip side of that is you're going to bring in a really big industry that people may or may not want here. But
Right.
that's what these decision points allow for.
Right.
The idea of we want Target or Walgreens or this business to come here, it doesn't work that way. You have to build
Right.
the infrastructure.
You got it. And we have limited infrastructure, which
And
is
that's
something
why-
we have to be very careful with.
What can I do for you in
Yeah.
terms of the staff? We've been focusing on road maintenance plans and infrastructure and trying
Exactly.
to build up the capacity of our departments in order to attract
Yes.
some businesses. But we have to also work on bylaws and planning and visions,
Mhm.
otherwise.
Yeah.
And we need to remove barriers where
Right.
appropriate,
I agree
right?
with that.
But
fully
not-
agree.
Town meeting.
Not if you
not-
don't want to, though. Right?
Well,
Well,
right,
no,
and it's subject
yes.
to town meeting anyway.
And not every barrier is the one that has to be broken. So there may be some barriers that are well put in place and shall stay in place, but others where we might improve as a means for an economic development perspective. And I think that if the town is in agreement with that, then we can tackle those. So again, I mean, like, for example, we have some limitations based on our water and sewer lack of capabilities or capabilities that we have. And that's gonna limit ours in terms of what we can do, as an example.
But if you told me, and this is just hypothetical, please, I know
Yep,
much is
yep.
hypothetical. We'd like to run business all the way down to the town center.
Sure.
Then we could investigate various ways and capacities in order to add the infrastructure you need to do that. But why would the staff waste their time,
Correct.
If they
money
don't
and
want-
energy on something it's a pipe dream?
Sure.
Right? So without the vision, you know, the staff is just going to do what they do until they're told act. And then
And
I'll
then-
spend all my time on that, but I need the people who
Right.
evaluate me and pay me to
Yeah.
say this is what we want you to focus on.
And last but not least is that there are stages. This is not going to be a big bang approach. It's going to be a staged approach. That's very important for us to note. But however, we need to understand what our end goal is. Because if we're going to transform ourselves to, and again, a hypothetical, if this was to be an industrial town, it's going to look potentially very different from being an agricultural town versus being a tourist town. And so we need to understand what is our end goal, and I think that is really important for us to look at.
And to let the staff know.
Yes.
Right.
Agreed. I can tell you from my perspective, I would love to be able to see somehow the benefits of tourism be better taken care of in this town and attract the type of tourism that brings revenue to town, and therefore not just to individuals but also to the town itself. I think we have tremendous opportunities around us that we are maybe not quite leveraging.
Correct. That's why our focus on special events, on the things that make Hubbardston
Absolutely.
farm tours, hopefully some type of farmer's market in the future. That's the stuff the Economic Development Committee's working on. They're not working on targets.
Mhm.
They're working on how can we leverage our farms, how can we bring tourism here, Airbnb, weddings.
And that is money that stays in town, does not necessarily come in and
Right.
evaporates right off the bat. And that, I think, is also important to note.
Because if you left it up to someone like me, a town administrator, the idea would be fast growth, solve budget problems, look like a hero. You want to protect
Sure.
yourselves from people like me, right? Who wants? I'm kidding, not me personally, but short-term growth,
Right.
because and then
Agreed.
bring in someone who fits your vision so that they can execute that,
Absolutely.
rather than have someone come in and tell you what your town should look
Right.
like. That's
Yeah.
wrong.
And we have to also be very careful putting our eggs in one basket, sometimes can be
Correct.
problematic. The economic downturns that come and have hit towns that have just put their eggs in one basket are, there's many cases out there, and we do not want this for Hubbardston. Personally, I wouldn't want this for Hubbardston.
Can I ask you a question? How do we approach this project?
Good
Do
point.
we
Well-
send, do we
So
send
you
this out
start by,
I'm throwing it out there, how do we approach this and get ourselves up to speed, and so when we can come to a meeting, we can discuss it properly?
Well, are you ready to take recommendations to Todd Miller? You want us to take some votes tonight with respect to some of the things we want to be reviewed, or do you want to go through us to go through this process first and give us a month or two?
I think we can do it simultaneously, because although we do want the end goal, we also want to start. So
Okay, so what I would suggest to the board is we will go on this town, think of towns, take drives, think of what they've done, what you like and dislike about them. We'll come prepared to discuss that.
Well, can
And
I throw it
then-
out there kinda quick right now, while we're looking at it? We'll just, it wouldn't take much time.
You're welcome to have a few minutes, go ahead.
There's towns like Fitchburg and Gardner, I don't think we'd ever wanna be like them because they were industrialized. Just a quick opinion. Colvin's a nice bedroom town, but they do have industry.
Commercial, they have a big
They have a lot of
district.
commercial base.
Yeah.
Paxton is another bedroom town, but they do have a little bit of industry there. Petersham is like Hubbardston, there's nothing there. Princeton,
Princeton has the mountain, which is a major,
right, but that could
resource to
also,
them.
like Francois said, that's a big push for area businesses, because if you built something for those people that are attracted to that, that would really help out, and a lot of those people come up here and they're looking for things. So Sterling is, and Rutland we don't wanna end up like Rutland with solar farms. That's one of my biggest problems. I know when I drive through there and I see solar farms everywhere, and they're not hidden from the road. I'm glad, we have a few problems, but that's an area I don't wanna look like, but they do have other industry there besides just the solar farms too. Templeton has industry and residential. Anybody else? Westminster, Worcester? We don't wanna be like Worcester.
No.
well, so we wanna go
We're not
through that, we wanna put that
Don't worry
together,
about
but
that.
everybody needs to do this, and
Right.
that list I put there is interesting, there's an outfit called the, Donahue Research, Donahue
Yes, you have it
Institute,
on
they
there.
work with UMass, and they produce data,
Okay,
particularly relating to populations.
yep,
And what was interesting about their study is that all the towns that ring Hubbardston were included in the their central Mass region,
oh,
and projected to grow around 6% to the year 2035. But Hubbardston, which is actually growing fairly rapidly now, was put within the Franklin-Berkshire County region,
oh, wow,
which is only projected to grow at about 1%.
wow,
And I think the reason is because we lack those drivers of business that the
Correct.
surrounding towns have. So it was just sort of a point of thought, but that wasn't a particular group of towns I was just picking out, except for growth rates.
mhm,
And what we want to do, and they said in the study, Hubbardston's growing fast because people like me retired here from Paxton, where the taxes were almost twice and you could buy a much better house for the price. But we're going to age out, and we're not going to have kids, and we're not going to go back to work. So you better put some incentives in for younger families
Yep.
to come back.
right.
So that's kind of my focus on this, but I think we could talk about it forever, and I think
So I would say.
we need to continue.
So what I've heard and what I'll do is I can tell you earth removal is a focus of mine. So I'm gonna not give that to Todd. I'm gonna take it on myself. Solar bylaw, I'm gonna give that to him.
Yep.
And then the sign bylaw is also
Yeah.
which we'll talk about real briefly for 1 second, is coming from the Economic Development Committee, so those two things will be, those are short, can get those two pretty quickly.
Quick bangs, yeah.
In terms of the two things that I would need more from you is economic development and affordable housing. So I agree with your analysis, but I'll challenge the board, it's gotta get a little bit deeper than that. So what we like about Princeton is this, what we don't like about Princeton is that, what we like about Holden is this, but no, we don't wanna do that. Cause you represent, residents in town that'll say the same thing. If you could feed that in terms of an economic development, we like this town, we don't like this town, and we like this industry, we don't like that, that'll make Todd's time cut in half. So then he can compare it just to those towns and give you recommendations based off that.
Okay,
But
Okay.
we would need more for affordable housing and economic development to act as a staff
Okay.
from
Okay.
you.
We will try to develop those reference towns and with a list of why we like them and what particularly we like about them, and what we
Right.
don't like about
Yeah,
them.
makes
maybe
sense.
also with the focus of what our vision is,
Yes,
right?
right, especially within these two categories, but,
Exactly.
yeah.
Which, it all goes full circle, which informs the master plan, and then the master plan informs us in the future. Right, so
Right.
So you're not really looking at the moment for input for the signs, the center district, the growth review,
So this is my opinion.
okay,
I heard what you said about growth control, and I agree. We can do that next year.
okay,
The town center overlay would be heavily informed, or anything to talk about
Based on
changing,
what we-
based off the economic development.
Yeah,
So then we
okay.
could say, okay, based off what you said, we can now do this type of overlay that would allow
Mhm.
whatever it is you said to take place,
Good point.
Okay.
which I think
Right.
town meeting would, it would go better
Right.
than going the other way, which some people do, which is let's put an overlay in and then figure out what's gonna go in it.
Right.
Okay.
That's where you get into an ugly situation.
okay. I think we'll put together a structure. Christina
Okay.
and I'll talk about it too and get something out, but we've
Yeah.
got a basic.
So let me ask you, I mean, the way that you would like to do this here is we don't want to break open meeting violations.
Yes.
So you will be prompting us for our feedback
then
via
we'll
some
just-
email.
Yes.
And then in the next meeting, we can bring that to you. In
Right.
terms of just the summaries that you
Right.
have collected from each
So-
one of us.
Right, so we each
Gotcha.
do and go back to Christina with your list of towns, so she
Okay.
can
Okay.
compile it, and your list of pros and cons.
So we're getting homework from Christina.
That's right.
You're also
You're a
submitting.
perfect teacher.
Yes, I am submitting homework to me as well. And I will prompt if I don't hear from you.
And we will be
Oh.
graded.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll get a grade.
Yeah.
I was about to say. about
And the
to-
open meeting caution
the
is
shot
well
button.
taken, so don't discuss it.
No,
Don't hit that
There's a
shock
group.
button.
yeah.
You'll see the point of me talking about the other committees too, right? Because you're gonna go as a group and say, we figured it out, and this is what we're gonna do as a town, and the finance committee is gonna be like, you can't pay for that, right? Like that-
Why not?
That's crazy, right? So then you have to revise it and
Sure.
work to
It-
make sure it
absolutely.
aligns.
This just
So-
needs to, it's like an onion, you need to peel it. And we just need to take out pieces,
So-
skin by
Okay.
skin.
So briefly,
Layers.
the sign bylaw.
Yes.
So I have been directed by the Economic Development Committee to revise the sign bylaw, come up with some recommendations, I should say, to make a revision of the sign bylaw and perhaps bring that to town meeting, annual town meeting in June. So, because we would never get it done in time for the proposed October special town meeting, which is coming. What I need from this committee, and it doesn't have to be tonight, is to inform that process. So although Todd's gonna write, it doesn't make sense if he's putting in things that you were immediately gonna veto, because without this recommendation from this board, it's never gonna pass. So, looking for,
Okay,
we don't want this in the new bylaw, like definitely the no's. Of course, it would be helpful is we do want these, but the no's are definitely helpful, because people kinda have the same yeses, it's the no's that change from town to town. So things to think about, dimmers, where they can be located, if you're gonna do, if electronics the way to go, what time do they shut off, what can they display, how far from residents? Those can be
size.
recommended to you, but
Mhm.
kind of the guidelines for Todd would help. It's a much faster process if he's like, okay, I can't include that at all, so.
Okay.
You want me to accumulate those too as homework? You guys all send them to me.
Yeah,
and I'll send them.
well, we'll work on sending something out, maybe.
I'm thinking
to
50
prompt
foot
people.
LED.
Would this
lights
be
on all
helpful
night.
if we go
Could be.
through and do, signs are categorized by like styles and,
Mm-hmm.
do you want us to send like the food for thought memo out before
Yeah.
you come back?
Sure.
All right, let's do that with
Um,
homework too, because that's gonna be very hard to integrate.
There's gonna be a
the
lot of
information.
reading, so if we get it all sent to us, it's really,
I could break it down into a table or a chart so that it's easier for you guys to go yes, no, yes, no.
Or here's
no.
things to consider, or you can add some
Right.
comments if you need
it'd be a
to.
lot easier.
Yeah, look,
Yeah. Anything on the sign bylaw is open for discussion then, right? It's not just,
Yep.
okay,
It's not just electronics, it's
Everything,
Okay.
okay.
the idea of,
Now,
from everything from stapling a sign to a tree, to, putting in a permanent sign, to
billboards.
municipal buildings, billboards, advertising.
Yeah, and you can do permanent signs and temporary signs, and lighting, and sandwich boards, and,
Okay.
we'll try
was
to
that
give
part
you.
of the survey that was sent out to the town residents, was there
Yeah,
anything?
you say here,
was
you
there any-
reference the economic development. Did they take a position, or did they just cite it as one of our problems?
They said that it's, like you stated, that it needs to be updated.
Okay.
They didn't take a position yet, so
Okay.
Todd's gonna bring them some recommendations. They're gonna give him his revisions. I'll probably bring the same to this board, get your revisions, and then
Okay.
in 2 months, we picture coming with a final draft and saying, okay, where are we at?
Right.
Preparing that for town meeting, hopefully having a successful update with whatever vision you want, and then implementing in June for next summers.
We'll try to get
Because I was
Christina and I
on,
something out as to organize your thoughts.
because I was on the ZBA hearing, I had to step down because I'm on a butter.
Yes.
But there was opinions at the meeting, people saying they'd like to see the signs, and other people saying they don't wanna see that. So that's,
For every person that says do
Right.
this, there's another one saying don't.
so that's something we need to take into account.
I'm not saying here that we need tons of electronic signs. I'm saying we should update the bylaw to reflect what people want.
Right.
And the new technologies in
Mhm.
signs, which ours doesn't even address. So, you can have LED without scrolling, you can, we'll put together something. I've given some thought to how we might organize our thought process here.
As long as it's not electronic.
Okay,
It's important for businesses and other things. If you're talking about growth,
Right.
they need to know the rules. And
Right.
You should be enforcing them, so fairly.
Right.
You want businesses, they gotta be able to advertise with signs.
But we
Right.
the staff gets told a lot, like this, well, this rule isn't right. I'm like, well, we're only enforcing the rules that the town said we should enforce. Like,
Right.
We don't create them. So we need direction.
Right.
If we're being told that the rule's bad, the rule needs to change, not the staff.
That's right.
You don't want your staff changing and going rogue, so we just do what we're told.
makes
we'll try
sense.
to get, we'll put both of these topics on the agenda for
Next month.
October. And we'll try to get something back to you by then,
Okay,
after following that meeting. Okay? Anything else for Ryan? Should we move on?
No?
We do have some other things we have to get to.
Good luck.
thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you,
Good night,
Ryan.
Ryan. Have a
Yes,
good
we
night.
appreciate your efforts
And welcome
in all
back.
directions.
It's good to be back. You usually say that. It's good to be back.
He's back.
Okay. Do you want to, this 10 Burnshirt Road special permit extension came up fairly
Quick.
recently. And I'm gonna let Christina talk about it just a little. It's in here, it's what,
It was, so, 10
Oh, it's
Berkshire
right here.
Road.
Attachment 4-1.
Yes, 4-1, 4-2, and 4-3, and 4-2 and 4-3 are on the back. So what we have here is, the applicant's name is Michael Tolman. He came before the planning board, back here in, August of 2017. It was reviewed by the planning board basically as a house that's
Mhm.
right close to the road, so obviously doesn't adhere to the setbacks.
Right.
And asked, he wants to put an extension on the house and work on the foundation. He's just trying to fix up his house a little bit. The planning board reviewed it and said, and gave its blessing, they gave its approval. And because of certain aspects of his life, which he goes into in the letter on page 2, they did not start work on the project immediately. And the problem with that is the bylaws of Hubbardston state that you have to start your special permit, you have to get it going within 2 years. It is important to note that the MGL says they have up to 3 years, but Hubbardston's a little bit more restrictive. They say they have 2 years to start. The MGL does say that as you'll notice on the bottom, it's in agenda attachment 4.3, that special permits can be extended for good cause. So this gentleman came back and went, I want to start working on it now. It was flagged because his special permit was about to expire, and so building department came to me and went, they're about to expire, they don't necessarily want to move ahead with a building permit if, literally, in a month, if he doesn't get moving, it's going to expire, and then they have to go right back through the process again. So they sent it to me, I'm sending it before the board. It is an administrative action, which is not, why this is not a public hearing. There are no changes to the application. Excuse me. No changes to the application. It doesn't require a public hearing or a 4 out of 5 supermajority vote. They're asking no changes to the application, just an extension of 1 year to get started on something that was already approved by the planning board 2 years ago.
Can I just ask some very basic fundamental questions? I
Yes.
mean,
Oh,
we
and
are
I have the
basi-
plans here if you guys want to see them.
Well, that's where I was going.
Yeah,
I
why
mean,
don't
there
you pass
there have been actually no changes in the zoning for that area. There's been no changes as it pertains to any identified issues with that property or land that we need to
Not
be
that
aware
I'm
of.
aware. And there are no changes to the plans and what they intend to do. That was actually stated in the letter.
And that's the important element here.
Right, these are the plans here of the
Another
extension and.
point of order here is the Colemans are a construction company. They do foundations
Okay.
before, so it wouldn't take much for them to,
I'm talking about making the center of town look better.
this is down on the other side of town on Williamsville Road.
So there was a finding by the original planning board at the time, that granted the special
Distance.
permit, that said the extent of the nonconformance would not be expanded.
Correct, it's too close to the road.
So what he's doing is rebuilding that portion of his house that is close to the road, but he's not pushing the foundation out
Any closer?
any closer.
Mhm.
So, to my way of thinking,
Can I see the plans?
yeah, if you can read them.
Be careful with the microphones. It's a
Right.
horrible noise if they get the.
Sorry.
Do you want to see it?
That's all right.
I remember last time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Are the other pages similar or just copies or what?
Side views.
Yeah.
So they're only requesting it for 1 year?
You're asking for,
Can
I
I-
believe the thing is for a 1-year extension.
Because all they have to do is start it during that time. They don't have
That's
to
it.
finish
As long as they break ground, as long as they start, the special permit is valid.
Elevations.
They've started construction and their special permit can extend all the way till the end of construction. So they know they're gonna start within the next year and they're asking for that extension.
Okay.
I make a motion to grant the extension for 10 Burnshirt Road.
I second that.
For 1 year.
For 1 year.
For what they requested, 1 year.
Is there any further discussion?
Thank you.
Are people ready to vote?
Yes.
Yes?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I'll be issuing that decision and sending it around to them so that they can move ahead with their special, with their building permit, because that's what's currently holding up the building permit.
Okay.
Okay, you're gonna check on the requirements of that. Does it need to
Mhm.
be recordable? It might.
Yep.
Okay. As they say, moving right along.
Number 5, new business.
Okay. Well, welcome, Josh DuBois. We said that already. Do you prefer to be called Josh?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
okay. He's on the contact list. You're getting all the information?
I did. I tried my email and I'm having issues with it. We'll have to figure that out later, I guess.
Okay, yeah, just
I
let
think
me
it was
know.
telling me to. It was gonna send me like a text code in my phone.
Mm-hmm.
But the 2 numbers that it's telling me to pick from is not anything to do with my number. I don't know if that's.
We can talk about it. Keep in mind, any email
if it
address
was-
you're using now was used by somebody else in the past.
Okay.
So if anything else needs to change, we can change those numbers in the system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you come in as a different number, it was probably a former planning board member.
Okay.
Member's number, exactly. We changed the name, we changed the password, but you still have access to all the emails that were written to that account.
Okay.
A lot of reading.
No, you don't have to read it.
You don't have to read it.
Only kidding.
All the history, you
Yeah,
don't,
reading.
going forward. And you should feel free to participate in our discussions.
Yes.
But you only vote on special permits when we have an absence, at the moment, have an absence or somebody has a conflict.
Okay.
It's to make that supermajority, because you can't have a super, you need the,
Yeah,
you're just the math, if you think about it. You
Yeah.
need that extra vote.
Yeah, you need
Would it be
the.
So,
appropriate,
but we are thinking about, because we push it over to November, asking town council to maybe increase to become, increase your participatory powers, that position,
Okay.
to sit and vote on when there's a regular absence on the board. But, we decided to just wait and see. So part of it's whether you want to get more involved, whether you like the way it is, but you can participate. Certainly, and I really don't care if you join us at the table, but you can't vote.
Okay, that's fine.
I was trying to say.
It's
So-
good to know,
Huh?
yeah.
I was trying to say that.
Any, okay, so we do have
Uh,
lots.
Alice?
Yes,
You want to?
Can it be appropriate we invite him to the table with us?
sure.
Oh, right.
Come up and
Let him
join
join
us.
Please
the board.
do, thank you.
Sorry.
You know,
I thought maybe he
That's-
was happy on the church pew.
No, I
He was
just-
patted.
No, but it was just,
It
Be
is
part of the
nice,
board.
Yeah, you are welcome.
Doesn't matter where I sit.
yeah.
Probably next time, shove down a seat because these are where our presenters sit.
Okay.
Okay, and that's
You need
fine.
a bigger table.
Well, no.
Bigger town office.
All right, we need to move on because it's getting late.
Yes.
To, the Damon Schmidt letter, which is the marijuana cultivation letter, the person that's looking for it.
You
And-
already referenced this guy previously.
We did reference it.
Oh.
This is the letter that came
Earlier
in.
today.
But remember we had the other lady that came in,
Right.
and that led to this sort of clarification that needs to be made with our respect to but that's later on in the agenda. This question is just to make you aware of what he's looking for in his,
and attachment 5.
yeah, attachment 5. And I think it certainly deserves an answer. I think we've got to be careful to say we don't have the power to expand his growing area. He seems aware of this. It would take a town vote to change the zoning bylaw.
Correct.
So we need to tell him that, and my thinking is we can invite him to come in and talk about his plans if you would. I mean, anybody's welcome to come in anyway, a place in our agenda, but if you'd like to hear from him. He interestingly says he already has a host community agreement with Royalston for cultivation and Templeton and Phillipston in the works. So this is somebody that's significant, many steps ahead of where the lady was that came to see us before.
Right.
He doesn't say which parcel he's looking at, which maybe he doesn't want to say. Maybe it's, he's trying to lock down an agreement on it, or for whatever reason, I don't know whether he's ready to disclose that or not. But it does say it's in the residential agricultural area, which is most of our town. So, aside from writing him back and just addressing the factual issues here, should we invite him to come in, talk about his plans?
Yeah, as
I don't
long
think
as,
it's a
as
bad
long as
idea.
you include in the information, so he's not doesn't feel like he's wasting his time.
Wasting his time, okay.
Yeah, as long as
I
he's
mean,
fully
I'm
aware.
assuming you're gonna be referencing the general zoning districts of marijuana establishment in the,
Yes.
in the bylaws.
Yes, and I will
that's
say-
black and white.
Right,
pretty
and I
much.
will say it's special permit for all of them, yes.
Absolutely.
But he's probably got a copy of that bylaw already, does he not?
I have not responded to Mr. Schmidt's email.
It's probably, it's online anyways.
It is.
Yeah, but he already talks about.
Right.
The point I think
Right,
is
yeah,
very.
So I think he's read our bylaw
Yeah.
one place or another.
The thing that needs to be clarified is that at this point in time, these are the bylaws, and so it's not up to us to make that decision, but it's
Correct.
really, it's a town decision.
Right.
Because if this were to be amended, it has to be amended as a
By town
bylaw
vote.
change, which then would not even happen until sometime in 2020.
Right.
Right, we'd have to go before town meeting, yeah.
Correct.
All right, so if you trust us to draft an answer to that effect, fairly short and sweet,
Do we need a motion?
sure, go ahead.
I make a motion that we respond to Mr. Smith's letter, or Alice does with Christina's, in response to the letter to our feelings that we discussed here at the meeting, the fact that we have to go by the general bylaws and how it's,
And invite him to
And to
come.
invite him.
invite him to come to the
If he
meeting.
would
like. Okay.
If he would like.
Second,
I second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Next correspondence.
I do have I mean, if I can quickly go back to this here, there's some interesting information this gentleman puts in,
Yeah, I see
which is
that.
basically, it's the revenue component in here, which I'm not completely familiar with. And I think just for us to be educated on this here, not only in terms of what the zoning requirements are, but also understanding from a town perspective. And I think that the residents of the town at some point in time ought to understand, you know, for solar we have pilot, for other things we have other means by which the revenue comes in. There's some revenue statements here which, quite frankly, at this point in time, I find interesting and astounding, but I'm not saying that they're not right. I'd like to understand what information there is about this year. So if you would entertain asking him to provide some details as to where he's coming with these numbers, I think that might be helpful.
Okay.
It would be informative,
$1
let's put it this way,
certainly make a
informative.
huge difference in this town.
It would, if the town wants to.
If it
allow
wants
that.
it, correct.
Right.
Yeah, the town has to,
It'll certainly eliminate our school budget problems.
my understanding is put together a host agreement that has those rates and numbers and so forth,
Mhm.
and he would be
But-
our first enterprise in town.
Mm-hmm.
Correct, but I'm just saying is that he's stating some interesting numbers here, which I think we need to understand how he's coming up with those
Right,
numbers.
is he basing them off of other towns'
What
agreements? with him?
what is it that he's basing itself
Right.
on?
Okay,
A better breakdown.
Is it
Right.
one of these here, or is
Right,
it?
or is it based off of other towns that he's dealt with?
Exactly.
Or businesses, whatever.
and it's interesting to note that he's talking about greenhouse, not
Exactly.
artificial lighting, which may make it more feasible with our grid, and
Right.
so I don't know, but we'll
It's
respond to
visible.
him appropriately,
Greenhouse is a
not
greenhouse.
turn him away, but invite him
Right,
to come.
correct. Better security, better, less visible.
There is a very specific question that he does pose, and that is would the town allow a greenhouse that nobody could see from the town, from the road or the house? Are you planning on providing him any information on that aspect?
Well, again, I would reflect back to our bylaws.
Exactly.
I think our bylaws do allow greenhouse, but I'll have to check it.
You're saying is it's
Yeah.
not just the marijuana bylaw itself,
Okay.
but I think we need to also include an answer to the greenhouse component here,
Okay,
because that question has been posed.
okay. You have those points, Christina?
We can
All right,
include them
we
in the
will
letter.
do that. The next is just, there was a affordable housing partnership survey that I did fill in on behalf of us. It was basically, this outfit is gathering information from all the communities, not just in Massachusetts, but all over, to figure out, and so it would say like, do you have senior housing, do you have, and since we'd just done the housing production plan,
You did.
there was no judgment calls in it. I just
Right,
filled it
right.
out.
And this was voluntary,
Yes, and it's voluntary, but
not required by law or anything.
it's basically, you recall, I went to the seminar, and these people
Mhm.
put it out, so I'm on their list, which is probably how it got to us. But, I don't mind helping people accumulate some data, what towns are going on, what's going on in other communities. The matters not reasonably anticipated by the chair, the one was the street or road, which we did. Okay, old business. If Erica Dack came before us, she was one of the outspoken critics of the Catesto.
She was the lady that sat over on the side.
Right, and we satisfied some of her concerns and we didn't, and then she wrote this follow-up letter, but she didn't appear at our hearing. So we basically need to tell her, I do think we owe a response. Anybody that writes a letter should probably get a
Agreed.
response. But that it has been approved. Thank her for her input,
Yep.
because it was seriously considered by us. And also state, she has a misconception that, which is the same we had, with respect to Nashua's sludge with the metals and things in it, that none of that was used. So that would be the point. If nobody has an objection, I'll.
No, I think it's important to qualify that we have been told that it is not going to contain any other content other than the Irving Paper Mill facilities, sewage treatment, I should say.
Right. The
Water
effluent,
treatment.
Yeah.
Yes,
And it's actually in the permit.
exactly.
It cannot
It
be anything else.
Cannot be anything
So,
else than that. So
I,
that's a factual component that we have guaranteed, to make sure that there's nothing coming from any other plant or other source.
Okay, so we'll respond to that.
I think it would also be helpful for her to know and understand, and I don't know if she knows this here, that the material, according to what we understand at least, has been already applied in other places here in town.
Yeah, she does know that, I think.
Okay.
But I do think we might satisfy her on that one point and thank her, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's the
concerns-
positive
concerns-
criticism as well as the negative
concerns are very
criticism that makes you a
important.
better regulator of this stuff, I think.
Yep.
Okay, 91 Williamsville Road.
Is that the solar farm that we talked about the
Landscaping.
landscaping out in the front? And
Yes,
at
the
that
letter was
meeting, I
sent.
said that they were there working on it. All we had is somebody come and clean up they cut all the grass down and the berm and all that, and it doesn't really hide much at all now. It doesn't look that great.
No, I think they just had someone come in and mow all that grass because they mowed in the field as well.
Right. That's why I wanted to, I know you've probably been by it too.
But that was before we actually sent our letter.
Oh, yeah.
We
Right.
should maybe follow up with Bill with this.
Mhm.
I don't know there's much more. We did say October, so we really weren't expecting to hear from him tonight.
No, but
Oh,
should we
okay.
follow up to make sure that we're going to hear from him?
From him, yes.
I think it's important, yes.
And to talk to Bill. I did drive by that also. It seems to me that he's maybe replanted the trees on the berm.
I don't know if they're replanting.
No, those are the
They-
same trees.
I think they were just hidden by large amounts of grass.
I go by that every day.
Sorry.
Okay.
So it looks exactly the same. They just cleaned up the grass.
And my letter went out to everybody, right? A copy of the letter.
I believe I sent a
Yes,
letter
I-
out to the
Okay,
board of what was
all right.
sent, yes.
But correct me if I'm wrong, that's in violation of their
Agreement.
special permit, that the landscaping had to be, the way it was, you know.
Yeah,
the way
It was
Bill-
never done
Bill did an extensive review of it, and
Right.
pointed out all the problems with it.
Right.
And what he said with that berm, I mean, I think it started out the right height, but it was not compacted correctly. It was,
Not the
he
right
called
material.
it a lot of slash in
Not a
it.
lot-
There was not the right material was added into it.
You know, I agree, you drive by it, it doesn't really screen it very well.
No.
I mean, part of it was the first one through permitted, and they shouldn't have been allowed that close to the road.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's there, and he's got to at least comply with what he agreed to comply with in the
Correct.
special
Permit
permit, so.
stipulates that.
So I believe at one point they planted lilac trees, if I remember correctly, but the grass outgrew the lilacs, and back when they mowed it, and they just mowed the lilacs away. So.
And Bill's letter was very specific about
Yes, it was.
what kind of vegetation they should put there,
Mm-hmm.
and in my letter to him, I said, you need to have a landscape person come in and present what you're gonna do here to clean this up. So we'll follow up with Bill, and hopefully, I gave him to,
October.
October. We should know
Yeah, and
something more in
you should
October.
definitely not forget about that, because Scott across the street
Mhm.
did complain about it.
Yes, he did.
A while back.
Right.
So we should really keep on top of that one.
So is that supposed to be like a privacy berm you're talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, his house sits up high too, and
Because
you know,
usually they just put like arborvitae's or something.
yeah.
And that usually
well,
works.
because his house sits up high, so I think they did the berm, they did the trees in the berm to
Oh.
get them up higher.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
It's not working.
no,
It's not working well, and it needs to be rethought, but we should have more next month, but you can put a note to follow up with Bill
I
on
will
it.
follow up with Bill.
Okay, I know it's getting late, but if you guys can give me a
Yep,
little bit of
absolutely.
affordable housing CPA
Are we
funds.
skipping 147?
Oh, 147. Okay, no, I didn't mean to skip it. They're gonna start construction on this, and there is a new chain of emails, just yesterday, that, is mostly addressed to the Conservation Commission, but Bill's gonna be there too. It's a site visit at 9 o'clock on Friday.
This coming Friday?
It's coming Friday,
Can I
which
make
we
it?
could go to. I thought I might go to. Certainly, they're not gonna turn the planning board away. And they have a permit in hand. It was the prior board for the next
Yeah.
phase.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, we have an email actually from 4 PM from Bill Murray.
Oh, what does
stating
it state?
That the planning board is invited to both the 9 AM on Friday meeting, and also, he has a meeting with, Chief tomorrow at 8 AM, to discuss, driveway entrance, whether or not they're gonna need a patrol there, depending on line of sights. So Bill is going out there to talk with the chief at the site tomorrow at 8 AM, and he says that the planning board's more than welcome to come to that one, or Friday at 9 AM. And that's the walkthrough for erosion control. as long as there's not a quorum.
No, you can go with a quorum to a site visit, you just can't discuss it.
Yes.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
aware of that.
yeah, you can. So, if, I would think with site visits, it's all gonna be about, access to, of vehicles at the turns and stuff. So if you want a more in-depth view of what the project's gonna look like, 9 o'clock on Friday would be the better time. I was planning to go, I'd be really happy to have.
I am unable to make it. I have work commitments.
Okay.
So I might be able to go.
Oh, anybody?
Yeah,
I mean, you're welcome
I
to
might
go to
go
this
too.
one too, with this site visits,
Usually
with
I'm
the chief
working,
too,
but-
if you want.
Okay.
Fridays are still off, so.
Cool.
I'll try to go and, we're really depending on Billy's. I think he has a good handle on this.
Right.
But it helps me to visualize it if I go, so, and anybody else, can come. All right, so that's gonna happen fast then. They're gonna get to work, they wanna start, there's trees that have to be logged. So be prepared, because we'll probably hear about it from neighbors. Do we know about this? Is it permitted?
Have they
No.
been notified? Should we notify them that it's gonna start? Would that be the proper thing to do? To give them a heads up so they're not blindsided?
I believe that their notification came with regards to the special permit.
Yeah.
They were told that it would start within 2 years.
Do you think it would be appropriate to send another notice out to the abutters? Just to give them a heads up saying this is.
I don't think we have that authority to do that.
We
We have
don't?
to be pretty careful about.
Yeah.
Well, we do, okay.
The only problem is if Borrego then stops again and starts again like they
What if
did
they
this
delay it
last
all
time.
winter?
If they delay again, then suddenly we've sent out a notification and
Right,
then.
okay.
You may, if you are doing a site visit and a representative is there, suggest that they
That they,
communicate.
yeah, to the neighbors.
Also,
That's not bad.
Yeah, I could
we are
do
letting
that.
them know if the neighbors are watching. That they're about to
Absolutely,
start.
absolutely true, but I think the
Yeah.
point is that as a
It's-
good neighbor, Borrego
Right.
at that point in time could, for all intents and purposes, indicate their intention to their
Right.
Right.
this-
abutting neighbors.
And the
would
the
make
conservation
you listen to
people are gonna
both.
have something to
Right.
say about this too, and, didn't he say MDC is coming too?
The DCR might be
DCR.
there.
DCR might be there too, so.
Because that is, there's
we
wetlands there.
can't
There's
assume
wetlands,
they're
yes.
gonna start, this is just their intentions, they've got a few
Yeah,
hurdles.
That's true, okay.
All right, so if we could go back to affordable housing, Christina did some sleuthing on this.
Ooh.
And basically, the way affordable housing funds work is that it's a certain percentage of the taxes that get put in this fund that the town has voted to put in
Yep.
CPC funds, and then that creates a pie, and out of the pie, a certain amount has to be dedicated to affordable housing, but the history people and the open space people, they can come in too and fight for the rest of the proceeds. So, so I said, well, what kind of, because we're thinking about meeting with, Habitat for Humanity, they're coming in October. How much funds would you really have to work with? So this was sort of Christina's answering that question. So there's been about 32,500 that's been earmarked for housing that's come in, and then there was 50,000 appropriated. But we might have to go back to the CPA and a town meeting and have it reappropriated depending on what we decide to do. Their plan was to sort of offer grants to people with low incomes to fix up their houses, in exchange for them putting an affordable housing restriction on the house. And my feeling is that from, I don't know everything about the affordable housing rules, but that you couldn't do that and then just allow that family to continue to live there. That it's actually, if you wanted to count in the housing production plan as a new unit, you could take an old, if somebody wanted to sell their house to us, which was part of this plan, or give it for taxes or whatever, you could then then count that. But I don't, they're making a little movement in that area. The state has allowed, for example, low-income people on the Cape to come and apply for rent subsidies to stay there during the summer, they've worked out. But generally, you can't subsidize somebody that's already in their living arrangement.
Mhm.
You have to start. So I don't think it's, it probably has to be rethought, but I hate to go back to them and ask for anything until we've actually come up with some kind of a plan that we would like to take forward. We are the
Right.
Affordable Housing Committee.
Mhm.
A point of information, and that is you just mentioned that we have to potentially go back to get was it a reallocation or
It was an extension.
an extension? Is it on the 50,000? Is it on the 32,000?
It's on the 50,000.
On the 50,000, okay.
I believe the extension was granted on the 50,000, but we would have to almost reapply, because at the present, our application says one thing, and if we wanted to say something else, then basically we're gonna have to possibly give the 50,000 back and then apply to get it for another purpose.
So the manner in which it was applied for may not necessarily allow us to use it in the way that
Yes.
we
because it was
potentially
very
are
specific.
It
indicating.
would
I gotcha,
count as
gotcha.
affordable.
It was
Okay.
very specific.
And then the other question I had is you said, and I thought I had heard you say that this could only be done in the town meeting? So this would be targeted for 2020?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we would have
do
to,
that.
as she said, we'd have to have a plan first and
I understand,
reapply.
it's just understanding what the timelines
Right,
are
right.
here. Okay.
This grant, it said to purchase an affordable housing restriction from a current Hubbardston homeowner. But that would have to be in conjunction with them selling it, you know what I mean? I don't think, and then provide due diligence for costs for allowing donated tax title properties to be rehabbed by a housing developer, such as Habitat for Humanity, as affordable housing units. Now, maybe we could fit this in, but this says allowing donated tax title properties. What I've been looking at is what properties does the town own, whether through tax title or whatever, you know, however it got on that list, the town owns it already.
Sure.
So, I just think it probably needs to be rethought. I'm giving you a heads up.
Okay.
But it looks like, I don't think, well, it does have to be approved at town meeting. It's not like, I don't think it wouldn't be reallocated to open space or history, I don't think, because a certain amount has to be dedicated to affordable housing. So I don't think we're really in danger of losing those funds. It's in danger.
It's just making sure that it is allocated with the purpose that we specify and that is approved by the town, is what you're saying.
Correct. And I wanted to have these numbers so that when we are listening to what Habitat for Humanity says, and they talk
Sure.
about seed money and how much you need and how much you can borrow, maybe it'll be understandable to us.
Very good.
So the other thing I've been doing, and Bill agreed to do this with me, and it's just tedious, is you can go on the website and you can put in Town of Hubbardston and you can get the list. We have a list anyway, it's in the housing production plan, but it gives you that list and then you can click on them and you can go through the list of what the town owns. And many of those and then they have it by acreage, but what they don't have it by is like, does it have frontage, is it wet, is it?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to ferret through that, and I hope to get hold of you in the next couple of weeks, and
Okay.
because I need somebody that knows the town better than I do to drive around and take a look, and
Okay.
Bill volunteered. So maybe by the time we come in October, we'll have lots that would at least be buildable from that list, so.
Or
Okay.
potentially pieces of property that could be utilized as a rehab.
Maybe, there's also, I don't know whether this exists as a list, again, that database that's the Donahue Institute has profiles for each town, and it says that there are 50-some units of empty housing in this town.
Really?
And I think maybe 10 of them were like seasonal, but they were just not used. But I don't know who those people are, and I don't know,
I know there are some around town that I've
I
seen that.
find 50 hard to believe.
I don't think there's 50, but hey, we never know. 'Cause
well, it would be some subset of that. It was like, but it was like at least 40. The
Might
other
be
10 were
outdated,
maybe
too.
seasonally used, people that,
Yeah.
Right.
but I
have
don't know
seasonal
how
lots
you,
in town, but
um,
that's a lot of people.
I don't know. And sometimes it's as expensive to rehab something as to start from scratch.
Right.
I could see if I can find if there's a listing of those, but it's not like you can go type in Town of Hubbardston and it gives you the list. So I don't know where you
I
would
thought
get
there
that.
was
I find it
something.
hard to believe that they would advertise empty houses. That's sort of like a burglar.
Yeah, that's the other thing, you wouldn't want to make this
I'm
list.
sorry.
Facebook.
This public, I suppose you could put on our website,
I mean, if it's
Um,
abandoned, don't you think they're probably not paying their taxes also? So maybe get a list from,
the assessor.
yeah. of, or even the tax collector.
Maybe. I mean, maybe you
I don't
could
know if that's
also,
possible.
trying to follow up with what our previous committee was trying to do, you could put a note on our website saying we're interested in properties. If you own a property, you'd be interested in
Talking to you.
donating to the town in lieu of taxes owed or whatever, we'd be interested in
Mhm.
evaluating it.
Before we do that, though, I think we'd have to get that approved by the selectmen and the town manager about waiving taxes.
Yeah, and I really think we don't wanna do too much before we see if Habitat for Humanity, I'm trying to get a good direction here.
Right.
One of the problems is I don't think you're gonna have a developer that'll come in and do, I mean, again, they could come and do cluster housing if they have 20 acres, and they could dedicate maybe 4 of those units for affordable, and, there are ways to work this out. But, I don't see addressing it as a big project.
Mm-hmm.
But you might be able to get a single family or a duplex built,
I agree.
possibly.
It's-
So,
Would be
let's see what they have to
It's-
offer.
yeah.
I just want to bring you up to speed on that.
Seating.
Gravel pits. Christina has done a lot of work on gravel pits.
Regrettably, not enough. I changed my schedule from last week to this week. I didn't let the board know. And so between Thursday and today, I only worked long enough to get the board copy out. And I actually came back to work today because now my hours are Wednesday and Thursday. So I do not have the list
But you can
available.
tell us a little bit about it. How
Yes, I
many?
can.
Yes.
Okay, we're looking at approximately a dozen gravel pits in town. What I did was I started with a list we had from 2001. I was told that there was a list or a report given to the select board in 2016. I have been unable to find that report. Aside from the town reports that we've been giving in every single one of our large books that say no large scale operations exist. So I dug a little deeper. I have a person who's in conservation who actually does walkarounds for different types of birds, and he says he's been to every former gravel pit in town because that's where whippoorwills decide to nest. It wasn't bobolinks. I'm sorry. I'm not a bird expert. And so from there, he goes, oh, well, the best way to find them, and the way he did it, was to do a satellite Google view of Hubbardston. They show up very, very well.
Very clearly, yeah.
And so from there, I'm building a list of gravel pits based on the names we have. Obviously, Brown, Fletcher Graves. We know where Cataisto and Marinelli are, but we also have smaller ones like Hakala. And the reason these were included on the list is not necessarily they need to be permitted, but according to the bylaw that we looked into, all of these have to have reclamation plans, even the town. Even if they do not have to be permitted, we have to have some concept of once they're done, they have to be. And obviously, as you read in the draft letter, we're considering just asking what their intentions are. So as I said, I've narrowed it down to about a dozen. I'm getting addresses on all of them so that we have a means of contact. And I'm also looking at the assessor's office for a mailing address, because whether the address is on Parsons Road, the taxes may go to another location. So all this cross-referencing, I'm going to have a table for you by next meeting. I'm sorry, not by this one. But that'll give us a baseline by which to contact most of the gravel pits in town. There was one that I was a little confused on. I guess the Pitcherville Road solar farm used to be a gravel pit.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't been able to find anything stating it was reclaimed before it was turned into a gravel pit.
Do you
And
remember?
the whole pit wasn't used as a solar farm. So I didn't know if we wanted to contact them. I didn't know if I should put them on my list. So,
I would ask the questions.
okay. Yeah, just ask.
I would put it out there.
I don't even know who owns it.
Do you want to read
You
this
know you
letter
know.
carefully? It's attachment 7.
Yeah, I see that. I thought it was.
It's been in a bunch of our packets because it's been bumped, so I was
Right,
really trying to
right.
get to it. I mean, part of the problem is that some of these places could have been reclaimed under a prior bylaw. This gravel permit, our new bylaw is 2017, it's not very old. There was
Right.
one before it,
Right.
but,
My question is, if they were in operation prior to this bylaw being enacted,
they would still need a reclamation plan.
it's still.
But they may have done the reclamation before the bylaw was enacted. I don't know.
Right, I don't think so.
So, well, read the letter, and if you want, this is the one that I was hesitated to send out without your,
I already read it, yeah.
Yeah, I've read it.
I mean, supposedly, they're supposed to do, either come back for renewal of their permit within 2 years, or a reclamation plan within 2 years, and it's been 2 years.
So basically, there's only one that's being operated, and that's a small operation, Hackler's on Parsons.
I assume so. I have no information that states
Right.
they're still working.
I believe he's still,
Still,
it's a small scale operation. The
Right.
rest of them, I believe, are not in any operation.
Right.
I make a motion, we,
I have
Okay.
just a quick point, and that is the third paragraph.
this,
I mean, my English is not very pretty.
I
as they say.
apologize.
But that's-
She said that actually it's a correctly worded English sentence, but Alice wanted me to change that too. She says that does not sound like
Doesn't look
something
right.
that, yeah, I know.
Exactly.
The
so
planning
we'll-
board requests
We'll
Okay.
do the planning
Yeah.
board requests.
Yes.
I apologize.
you to let us know whether you
Yeah.
intend to continue the use now or in the future, or whether you have ceased operation or proceed to reclamation.
Exactly. Thank you.
I guess we could put in there a third option, or have completed a reclamation.
I think that should be also prepared and presented, because
Okay.
for all
Yes.
intents and purposes, if we don't have anything on record, but they claim
Yeah.
to have it,
It'd have to be reviewed.
they would
Right.
have to be reviewed, right?
Anyway, we can send it out if she finalizes her list, she's narrowing in on it. I don't know whether we'll get pushback from people, but it's,
Here's a
too bad the
question that,
records aren't a little long.
here's a question that I have, and that is what recourse does the planning board, the town, or just any authority have in the town with regards to non-compliance or no answers?
There's another column to this list that I'm trying to think, and we may actually have surety money from some of these people. It might be rather old. I have to talk to the town accountant. She's only been in here for about a month now, and I want to sit down with her and discuss these other accounts that she has. She stated there might actually be other accounts aside from the Cataistos that have money outstanding. So the question would be, and obviously I'm not
Outstanding
advocating
or
this.
in reserve, you mean?
What?
In
Outs-
reserve.
In reserve.
In reserve.
Yeah. Okay.
So the reason the surety money is usually offered up is, like in the case of the Cataistos, they gave us 10,000 because it would cost possibly that much to reclaim their pit if they did not do it.
Mhm.
I don't know what the town's legal standing would be with regards to taking the surety any other surety monies we have on hand and reclaiming those pits without, the involvement of the owner, but that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying that would be one recourse, possibly, but I think we would have to contact them first, and we'd have to get in touch with legal before we did anything like that, obviously.
I'm more interested in understanding if there is no answer, because my understanding is, and I have not been here that long, that some of the individuals that we've attempted to contact have just not responded. And so my question is where's the stick? The carrot has always been, we send a nice letter, we provide them with the information that we have, and we want to engage in a discussion, a conversation. The question is at what point in time do we have to use other recourses to engage either that conversation, or is there a legal requirement that they have to follow, and if not, are there, I don't want to start using words like penalties, but are there things that we can use beyond just sending letters upon letters upon letters?
The earth removal bylaw does allow, if they don't do certain things, we can fine them, but that's a rules and regulations.
Gotcha.
I would argue if the planning board wanted to find out what the stick would be, we would need to draft a letter and get it reviewed by KP Law with regards to
Okay.
whether we could, I guess, force reclamation, charge them and make them.
So I think what we need to understand is what
Or put a
are,
lien, I don't know.
I think what we need to understand is if there's only so many times the letter is effective,
Right,
beyond which there has to be some repercussions if there's no answer, and we need to explore what that is potentially.
right.
I'm not saying that it has to be done at this point in time, but we may need to explore that,
Okay.
is where I'm going
I
with
think
this here.
most of our letters have gone out to one particular pit. I don't think generally we've
We've
notified
sent
other
out
owners. have we?
Marinelli, Cataisto. We've also gotten in touch with Fletcher Graves with regards to requesting information with regards to the cutting they were doing there, because we
Yeah.
had complaints from an abutter. We heard nothing back from the Fletcher Graves pit.
Okay.
We can follow up with one letter. We can follow up with certified letters. We can follow up with requesting site visits.
Mhm.
I mean, there certainly will have to be a process that maybe we need to think about
That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
It's understanding what that process is, make sure that we're following it, and by the time we get to that end process, understand what the recourse is beyond that. From a legal
Okay,
perspective.
yeah. But everybody's on board with sending this letter? Did we do a motion?
No, there's been no motion to send this letter to the pits in town.
I make a motion that we send the letter as drafted with the change presented.
I would like to second that motion.
The changes presented.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so, Tasto, I just moving down this.
What about the Marinelli invoices?
Marinelli be interested, is there bond money for that?
I don't know, but again, I can
Okay,
have
so
that
let's see
information by our
if she
next
can
meeting.
get that information back.
Okay.
And they did promise a response to us in sort of a brusque way, but maybe we could ask them to follow up on that, you know?
Mhm.
They're the ones that claimed they were gonna use it for solar. I can't remember.
No.
They had.
No, they were going to sell it.
Yes.
Any.
Yes.
They didn't specify, okay, well, my,
They were going to.
I mean, part of these usually come up because in the end, you can't sell the property unless you do the remediation. So there is an incentive kind of built in when you wanna
Right.
do, unless the buyer's willing to take
And do we-
that kind of a
do
risk
we-
with the title.
Do we
so.
know that for a fact?
No. Suppose if they sold it with the understanding they were gonna continue to use it as a gravel pit, I don't know that reclamation has to occur before the property changes hands.
But again, a reclamation, I'm sorry, these are all inactive. These are
Correct.
inactive
Yeah.
pits, so
Yes.
they could not just simply go ahead and,
They'd have to come and get a permit.
They'd have to come and get a
Yes.
permit. If they sold it as a gravel pit, they'd have to come and get a permit.
Cause all the
to-
permits
but it
have
also,
expired.
exactly, it has expired, and
Yes.
it has expired beyond the 2 years that we have as a limitation, right? Or the time limitation, I should say, by which
Believe
they have to
that's right,
file a
right? There's no-
reclamation.
There's been no active gravel permits in the last two.
No, my point is that a reclamation plan is required after a certain period of time beyond the expiration, or am I wrong about that?
Yes, once there's a well, it's slightly vague, the way it's been read. There's,
Which
it
is in
has
the
to be
letter.
beyond the expiration of the permit or cessation of operations. But I don't know if that takes into account the concept of an intention of cessation of operations. Do they intend in 5 years to reopen the pit? Which is why I felt that asking for the intention of the pits was important. Because I don't know how much of a stick we have with regards to our own gravel pit bylaw.
Does our building inspector have jurisdiction over that?
It's out of zoning, so I don't know. I would have to ask.
Can you ask that?
Yep.
Everybody agree with that?
Yeah,
Ask
that
our
makes
building
sense.
inspector, cause he may be an ally if he has jurisdiction, he may not have jurisdiction, I don't know. Okay, so the next thing on here, the town has a gravel permit, and this is one of the
I'm
issues
sorry,
too.
appoint
Yes?
Catesto is next.
Catesto,
And just
please,
so you know,
yes.
we have not yet received the money that was requested or invoiced, but we also have not passed the 20-day appeal period of the decision. So
Okay.
there was the money requested, for the follow-up of, the writing of the decision, the follow-up inspections and all of that. That money has not yet been received by the planning board, but we also are still within the appeal period of the
So
decision.
what's the deadline for that,
It will be the 10th
of this
of
month?
this month. will
Was
be-
that written in the decision?
No, what it is before they begin any kind of reclamation, before they start work on the property, they have to give us the money that is in the decision, that is written in the decision.
And the appeal period of 20 days is,
Coming up.
The 10th
On the
of
10th.
September.
right, and that's in the statute,
Mhm.
Yes, that's in our bylaw.
our bylaw, right, the
Okay.
bylaw.
So, I mean, I'm assuming the bill is aware of that too,
I'm sure. I have heard nothing from him or other.
okay?
You could ask him
I'll follow
if he
up.
has an update on that.
Yep.
So, the town owns a permit, which I believe is not active, and owns a
Pit.
gravel permit.
Yes.
Pit. And they're exempted from requirements of a permit, but they're not exempted from requirements of if they're not gonna use it, they have to come up with a closure plan.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, I sent some information to our town administrator that it was resulting from a conversation we had I said, you know, one of the issues is where we're trying to enforce these rules, people know that there's a town permit that's in that same box. And, so anyway, all I did was send him the
You
provisions
highlighted
of the
it.
bylaw that, you know, what they have to do. So they may come back with something. I think he would be interested in, hearing what the uses are, you know, could be made, because the town could use some revenue too, to do that. So anyway, that's just to inform you why that's on there. So, the next thing, F, and I know we're really getting late, so this is like the 2-second version of this, is I thought, Hubbardston, the town of Hubbardston had these administrative rules for planning boards, which is so that everybody that takes my position as chair, or that, you know, the public comes and requests, it just sort of sets out these procedures, just basic stuff. When you can go to site visits, how long ahead of time you're supposed to get your plans in. So you can read them. And we have, I would call them operating procedures, because we have a right as a board under our general bylaws to create some operating procedures. But before Christina and I go into too much more work, I'd like to know whether you guys think this is a good idea. For example, one of the things that snuck up that I wasn't even aware of was this, that Bill brought to my attention, was this regulation, what's it called? The
Mullen rule.
the Mullen
Mullen
rule,
rule, right.
that you can vote. Remember how we get in these conversations,
Yep.
these debates, can you vote on this, can you not? So Christina could put in like what that if you can vote on minutes if you weren't there, if you reviewed the tape.
Right,
You can
right.
vote, so just putting some of these in, just helping both people in my future chair and Christina's future chair and board members come through. So these aren't beautifully written, they're just,
Well, I think it's, with some of the stumbling we had to do,
Would
I
be
think
help-
this would help a lot.
I don't need a vote, I just need to know people's.
What do you think?
I've been looking for this here for a long time, and
Yes, I think this-
I, as a matter of fact, I had some other towns as an example, but this is perfect to use as a starting block.
And it would also put in like our standing, you know, the boards that we send representatives to, just the nuts and bolts, nothing, I'm trying not to make anything controversial, just putting down in writing some of our procedures. All right,
The only thing
so,
I'd like to make sure, if we're gonna go along with something like this, is ensure that it is in conformity with our bylaws.
right,
Make sure we don't stipulate something here that is actually against part of our bylaws.
right, we will have to cross-reference it. And also
Right,
you
right.
guys gotta vote on it, you know,
Right.
if we're gonna do it.
Well, I don't think we should vote on
Right.
it until it's completed and then.
And reviewed.
I just glanced at it kinda quickly, I'd like to really read it better.
Okay, this Mullen bylaw, Mullen, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Mullen-
Was
I read the
it's a
bylaw, yeah.
town, you can accept it as a town by vote of town meeting, and it's been in place for years here.
I never
But
heard of
who
it.
would, yeah, exactly, so, all right, so that's what that's about. We will continue on unless somebody has a big objection.
Nope.
And the other thing on this was, also, if you come across errors in our documents, things that are confusing, that need to be fixed, this is the punch list concept. Send them in to Christina, you know, the page, whether
That's
the
okay to
general
do?
bylaws, the zoning bylaws, and
Okay.
the confusion, why you think it's confusing. And
This is
then,
an idea we came up with just because we have to do a public hearing for anything that's a bylaw. Or
Mhm.
even a rules and regulations thing, we have to do a public hearing. But to do onesie-twosies of things we find, it
Becomes
makes
very
no
difficult,
sense.
yes.
So while we're reading, everybody just send them
Okay.
to me. I will keep a running list, and then we'll do one big public hearing and knock them all.
Have you started collecting?
I have started getting them from Alice so far,
Okay,
and from myself.
May I assume that the one that you and I discussed about the marijuana
Is on
one
there.
is on there?
It's on there.
Okay, very good,
Clarification.
thank you.
The other thing on here is a registry signature. Craig, if I could just have a John Hancock from
Send
you
this down.
on that, that will get sent out to the registry tomorrow.
one of the other things you can put in that punch list is that our original marijuana moratorium is a bylaw, which is expired.
I know,
And it
Beth
should be-
mentioned that.
I think we need to
Needs to be
review
updated.
it.
Well, we don't have a moratorium, it was superseded by,
So it
But it
should be
should then therefore be
eliminated.
removed.
yeah, it should be removed,
And
right.
so
Right.
that's the update.
Right,
The
that is,
removal.
right. exactly my point, right? I
Are
thought
we
you were
gonna,
talking
are
about-
we gonna go to this 229 Gardner Road?
That's future.
That's not-
Said for future discussion.
Yeah, those are future
Future
topics to be
things.
discussed.
Well, I didn't know if we were
However,
gonna try and
didn't come
catch it
in.
while we're here. I know it's late, but.
He didn't come in, to discuss it.
So you can look at what's up and coming on the
Right.
plan. The big thing for,
Thank you.
here you go, for
Thank you.
October is, well, we'll see what develops, but, we'll try to get this back. It's a slow time, the list of benchmarking. So we'll try to do this, we'll try to do Habitat for Humanity, listen to what they have to
I'm really
say.
excited about that.
Yeah,
You two have been really busy.
That's great.
what?
You two have been busy.
Yeah, it'll keep you busy. All right, any more? There's nobody here to talk for a second public hearing. Anybody have anything else they want to add? Otherwise, I want to make a motion. Craig wants to make a motion, he's already stood up.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second the motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
So be it.